Hey, what's going on, everybody? ChazmaN here, and we are back once again with a brand new episode for the ChazmaNpodcast. As always, your favorite place to hear all of the wonderful vault-tec and Fallout information that you would like to take on. So, just what was it? Just last week, we did an entire conversation on what is it, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and kind of got lost around the same time. I know me and Phoenix have been. I don't know about Phoenix, but I know I was eagerly anticipating this show. You know, whether good or bad, and I guess we're gonna kind of dive into that, huh?
Yep, yep. Yeah, I can't believe we were on hiatus for like 4 months, and now we've done 2 episodes in just as many weeks. We're
You
back
guys
to
are,
our stride.
yeah, these viewers are eating good right now.
Oh yeah.
Kind of sucks we couldn't deliver them an awesome Halo chat. I was kind of anticipating that until I
Well,
watched
we can
it.
come back to it. Yeah, I still have a couple episodes to finish on it, but we'll see. I would like to talk about it, but that's for a future episode. We'll save that for another time.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of getting right into it. Yeah, kind of the big talking point with everybody right now in the like TV media sphere. I guess Fallout kind of has the stage right now, right? It's kind of in the spotlight. Everyone's kind of
Yeah,
soaking it in.
it's blown up. I mean, what the was it like the top rated show I know on Prime? I think
Yeah.
maybe across the board for a bunch of other ratings as well. And we've seen like even like a resurgence in the games. I think what is it? Fallout 4
Fallout
was the
4 is
number
like the
one in Europe, and I think it
yeah.
was like number two under Helldivers or something in
Mm-hmm.
the States. I'm sure it's also made a resurgence on like GOG and a whole bunch of other platforms as well. So I know I was wanting to hop back in as soon as I heard the music from the first episode. I'm like, you know what? I think I could
Mm-hmm.
play some more Fallout 3 or something. So yeah, it's the big talking point right now. Everybody's excited about it, and yeah, I just overall feel. I know we're gonna dig into it, but I was pleasantly surprised. I'll just kind of start off with that because I was a little pessimistic, but yeah, no, it was a good time.
You know what else? I guarantee you has got to be high on numbers right now, and kind of sucks because I don't know. It makes Todd Howard look good, but I bet you 76 has probably got a boom in subscribers and
It
people
has.
playing that. You know, getting to play like a
Yep.
RPG or whatever. What is it, MMO or whatever? Like experience with that.
Yeah, I actually considered maybe hopping. That's one of the one Fallouts I haven't really played,
Same here.
barring like the tactics game. I know I played like maybe like an hour or two when it first came out, and then it had all of its nonsense that happened with all the bugs and glitches and just crappy performance. I kind of fell off it, but I thought about maybe getting back into it to give it a shot. But I don't know. Part of me still just wants to go back and play like Fallout 3 or New Vegas or something. So definitely one of those games on the horizon for me. Just haven't decided which one yet.
Yeah, the one out of the between 3 and New Vegas. New Vegas I've only played through once. Fallout 3 I feel like I've played through like 2 or 3 times, and I don't know. I'd
Mm,
be down to at the moment to kind of run back through it as well. That's why I was telling you. It's like if you start playing it, let me know, and I will definitely get another some streams going on my channel.
yep.
But actually
But
that's a
games are for another topic. Let's. Or do you want to what?
well, I was gonna say that's a good place to start since we're talking. Because I mean, do we want to
Oh
briefly
yeah.
talk about some of our background with some Fallout? I know for me personally, if we want to start from the OG stuff, I've never actually played Fallout 1 and 2, which is kind of the origins of this series as a whole. I know you've got a little bit more experience possibly with PC. Did you ever get to touch these games?
So I played one. I never did play two. But it was after I'd played three. So I think we probably had the same introductory point. We both came in Xbox 360 era, Fallout 3, which for me, I loved that game. I know a lot of people came at it with a little bit of hate because it was a very different departure from the old two kind of isometric. More I guess I want to say more faithful RPGs with Fallout 1 and 2, but I don't know, I dug it. I liked the scale of it. I liked the exploration. That was just when I was starting to get into games that were a little more open-ended in their world exploration. Like I think I just played Oblivion. And of course, this is coming right off that
Well,
being another Bethesda title. Just
can I throw in a
yeah.
personal experience? I actually remember, I don't know, back when you lived with your mom and dad. I remember going over to your place one time, and
Oh, so long
you
ago.
were literally showing me and my uncle. You were showing us this new game, Fallout 3, on your black Xbox
Mm-hmm.
360, and I remember you talking about how like that was like the game you've been playing for like 100 hours or something like that. And I think that was like the first time I'd heard of
Yeah.
Fallout 3, and of course, not long after that, I think I would procure that 360 from you. But yeah. great
Yeah.
memories.
Yeah, that game just has that moment. Like there's a handful of games that I have these introductory moments that grab. Like you have the Mass Effect 2 moment where the Normandy goes down, but this one coming out of Vault 101 and kind of getting that
Mm-hmm.
blinding look by the sun before you see the wasteland, like it sticks with you. And you can of course argue, quality and other aspects of the game, but presentation of Fallout 3 at least really hooked me in initially and kind of grabbed me into that world, and then I was on board for Fallout 3, New Vegas, 4, and most other kind of peripheral content. I went back and played Fallout 1. I never did get into 2. I don't remember exactly why. I think I just got distracted. I think I dabbled in tactics, but I definitely didn't get far in that one at all. So I'll only say that I played 1 and then all the 3D Bethesda
Yeah,
versions.
I totally forgot.
I love Fallout.
I think they said playership on even Fallout Shelter is like booming because they added like characters from this game
Hmm.
as people that are in your shelter. It's pretty
Did you ever
funny.
play Shelter?
I played a little bit when 4 came out because I remember that was like the big
Yeah.
this game's live now. I remember that.
Yeah, I played it for a month or two, and it was fun. I don't know how microtransaction has gotten over in the past few years, but it was a fun little, kind of sim builder, resource management kind of deal. So, the only one I guess beyond that I haven't played, I guess we already kind of mentioned it, was 76. I think I played it for like an hour when it first kind of launched or in beta, and then fell off when I saw just how terrible it was at launch. But I know it's got a lot of support since then. They've added a lot of DLC and fixed a lot of things, and supposedly it's a good game. I don't know, but that was definitely during Bethesda's low period, so we'll see. Maybe I'll give that a shot after all this.
Mm. But yeah, I guess as we kind of I, me talking about my personal experiences with Fallout are exact same as yours. Never got to really play 1 or 2, but 3 was definitely my entry, and then I think I immediately played New Vegas. I remember the whole E3 presentation for Fallout 4 was like the biggest thing ever. I remember that presentation. I think that might have been even like the first, what was it, Bethesda only game showcase or whatever they had at that time. And
Oh yeah, yeah. They
yeah,
had the Pip Boy Collector's Edition that they announced, which I have sitting back. Kind of see it right there. I think is what it is. I got my little atom bomb there too.
yeah.
Didn't I find the Pip Boy for you like at a pawn shop or
I
something?
think you did. And I bought it off you for like
Yeah,
pretty cheap. I think it was only like 30 bucks, 30, 40 bucks you charged
yeah. I
me.
think whatever I found it for, I sold it to you. But I don't know. I thought it was a pretty cool little collector's edition. Granted, it's a little cheesy, but it's all good.
Yeah. So I guess I don't know. Since we got that out of the way, what do you say we go ahead and start diving into? I don't know. What was it? What overall did? What were your early thoughts about some of the early trailers? Because I will say for me, I kind of fell into the grouping with a lot of people where I thought the trailers did not look very good for this. I was not like
Mm.
super hyped. I was kind of getting, you know, possibly a bad adaptation vibes. Now, not quite another sci-fi series, a video game
Microsoft
series,
product, yeah.
Microsoft product. But I was definitely kind of worried about this. So I went in with very low expectations. What about you? Were you kind of
Same.
tentatively approaching it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for similar reasons to you, like we were just coming off Halo, which I'm sure there's some out there who love the, reimagining of the Halo franchise for the TV series, but I was not a fan, still not. So coming off of that, thinking, okay, there's another Microsoft franchise that they're trying to turn to a TV series, just kind of had its bad foreboding feeling. And the early like set photos and production material that came out, it's not that it looked bad, but it's hard to gauge, especially a show like this, just from the images alone. Because Fallout, I feel like 99% of it, maybe not 99, I'm being a little hyperbolic, but a lot of it is about nailing a certain tone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Fallout has a mixture of a lot of weird tones. You've got like a dark humor, you've got, of course, the depression that comes from the apocalypse. You've got some, campiness, and like there's a lot of things that mix together to make Fallout what it is. And I wasn't getting that necessarily from the trailers. I guess my fear was they were going to be too campy or too cheesy or too one thing. Like finding that balance of tones was a big concern for me. Um, and I don't know, I mean, looking at it, it's not that any one thing looked bad, but you know how a lot of shows sometimes will try to go like one to one in the look of it,
Mm-hmm.
almost to its detriment, it looks too much like the game. Like I don't know, it doesn't read well in a televised or another type of medium. Like it looks good in the game, but when you see it on a movie or see it in a show, it looks a little awkward. And I guess I was initially concerned of getting that vibe, like, oh, yep, that looks exactly like the Vault tech stuff, exactly like the suits. I don't know. Maybe I was over critical just 'cause I was so worried about how Halo kind of turned out. But yeah, initial previews of the material, I couldn't get a good read on.
Well,
I was more
honestly,
skeptical than anything else.
for something like, I don't know, real quick, something like the Doom movie, the one with The Rock back in the
Mhm.
day, honestly, you can
Oh
make an
yeah.
argument that the worst part of it that didn't age well is the part where they tried to make it look like a first person shooter at
I
the
think that's
end.
kind of what I
And
mean. Yeah,
it's,
where they try to be
yeah,
almost too authentic, and it's a fine line. Like you definitely want them to be authentic to the source material, right? Because if they're not, fanboys are gonna bash them. I mean, I'd bash them because you
yeah.
want to have that, feeling of the games, the look and the feel, and the everything that comes along with it. But when you lean too far into it, it is a different medium, right? Games and
Hmm.
TV are different, so sometimes a one-to-one translation doesn't work well. And when you see the images, it looks pretty one to one. And I guess that was my concern that, oh, they're just going to go all in. It's going to come across too cheesy or too on the nose or something. But they skirted that really, really well. And we can get to it here in just a minute. But I think that if there's any like main thing I want to kind of come across with this, even if you have issues like story and whatnot, I feel like they really did nail that tone or the combination of tones that Fallout needs. It has the dark humor. It's got the campiness to it. It's got the gore where it needs to be. Sometimes in spades.
Well,
But I
it's
don't know.
also
They really
tough
did a
to,
great job feeling that out.
it's also tough because, like, not only do you have to have the dark humor, but, like, I don't know if you mentioned this, but there is, like, a certain amount of seriousness with the topic
Yeah,
and with the source material
they're heavy
itself. Like,
themes. Yeah,
yeah, you're talking about
end of the
like an
world.
actual
Yeah.
situation, like the Red Scare and the Cold War. Those were actual things that
Hmm.
we did go through, and I don't know. I feel like the show starts off with. I love the opening scene. If you, we'll get into, but like the way they kind of approach it, and it's like, I don't know. We'll get into it. I don't want to delve further
Yeah.
into the show, but I like it, and I think something that further goes into your point of like um, the way they approach the seriousness and the jokey stuff is I'm actually surprised. I mean, I don't see any way you could have done it, but in the games you play as a you character. You know, you're kind of a voiceless, thing, and you're
Mhm.
just your representation of what the character sees. And I feel like the Lucy character. I mean, we don't have to get right into Lucy, but I enjoyed what they did with her and how they approached her character and her characteristics and all of that stuff. Pretty great.
Sure. I guess I will say to that point, we can probably reiterate when we talk about characters in detail. What probably makes Fallout work a little better, and I'm not sure if this is more from a narrative focus or character focus, as opposed to something like Halo. Halo is all about a very pre-established set of characters, right? You can't have Halo without Master Chief. You got to
Mm-hmm.
have Cortana. You got to have all these different characters. And there's a lot of areas that if you don't get those characters just right, you're gonna fall under some pretty heavy criticism. Like obviously we've seen that with how they presented Master Chief and things like that in the Halo show. With Fallout, you don't necessarily have a centralized set of protagonists and antagonists. You have like factions, and you have different races and categories of people that are in this world. But not saying there aren't specific characters, but the show did a good job, I think, to side skirt a lot of them, like name drop a few. We saw a couple towards the end. I know we'll talk about
Mm-hmm.
in a little bit, but for the most part, these were all original characters that just fit the world, fit the factions well, and it gave, I think, the writers a lot of room to kind of be close to the source material, but take some liberties where need be and not piss anybody off too
And
much. So I think that was a smart decision.
there's also like a wide breadth of like vaults you can deal with. So,
Hmm.
there's so many vaults that they have in the lore and that they can like pull characters from. You could anything could come out of you've seen from the games. Literally anything can come out of some of these vaults with some of the
Yeah.
experimentations and different societies that were kind of going on in each of these. Like you can have someone as naive and ridiculous as Lucy, come out and
Hmm.
I don't know. It's
No,
interesting.
I get to your point. I think it's smart they didn't just like do a retelling of Fallout 3 or something like that. I think if they tried to shoehorn it into you're in Vault 101 and you're gonna go find your dad or something like that, I think that would have really shoehorned them in. And then you you draw a lot of discussion for comparison, right? Because like, well, that's not how it happened to the game, or especially in a game that's all about player choice and different endings. Like, nobody's gonna have their story play out on screen, so they needed it to be original. I think for it to have that openness for discussion, but while still keeping true to the Fallout nature and world they were building. So either way, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. So you want to start breaking into some of the bigger overarching topics for today?
Yeah, I guess we can kind of get into overall just how the look and feel of the entire world, kind of how it kind of operates and connects. And I would say a great place to start would be the very first opening scene. I feel like that opening scene with Walton and or Cooper and the character does a great job of kind of right off the bat introducing you to like him, to introducing you to overall I would say the kind of anxiousness, the nerves of people, you know, because of the Red Scare and
Hmm.
Cold War. Like you can definitely tell there's like a worrisome aspect of everyone's personality. Like I remember if you're watching the news reporter, he like opens up and he's getting ready to talk about the weather, and he's like, well, why should I tell the weather when I don't know if we're all gonna be here tomorrow? You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah,
do a great job of kind of making everyone seem at
setting that
ease,
tone.
uneasy about things. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, if we're talking about presentation, I think this goes to kind of the finding that right tone and knowing when to shift the tone. And this is something that a lot of the games, at least I don't recall really doing. Like a lot of pre-war stuff in like Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3, you kind of get after the fact, right? They kind of set those tone through, was it terminal reports or, little logs that you find. You very rarely, I think, got a feel for, okay, what was it like pre-war and having some one-to-one kind of presentation for that.
And
I guess the closer we get besides the show would be Fallout 4, who opened up that way with, before the bombs fell, kind of getting a feel like for those moments, right, before everything kind of
yeah.
went crazy.
And I remember some of the games like 3 and 4, they did most of that stuff in DLC. Like in the main
Hmm.
campaign, you didn't really do that, but I remember in terms of like was it Operation Anchorage and all that, you got more of like a view of like how things were operating, you know, in the before
Yeah,
time
but
and
even
stuff.
those went further
Kind of
back. Like the
further back,
Operation
yeah.
Anchorage thing is a little disconnected from, the bombs dropping. I mean, not completely, which of course what led
Oh,
up
you
to
mean
it,
like
but
the actual
as far as those
bomb? Yeah, I
those
see what you're saying.
moments before, like I mean Fallout, I mean it's a big timeline. It's a whole, history of events and things that kind of led up to it, but the moments I think about are those moments right before the bombs dropped, and then of course what kind of follows after. So honestly, I like the way the show handled that better than even Fallout 4. Like Fallout 4, maybe because it felt so contained, it's just you and your wife and your baby in the house, and there's not a lot of interaction with stuff around you. Just I think you had
Mm-hmm.
like same thing. A news reporter would come on and then get cut off. But I think starting with that party where you can tell everybody's trying to have this social interaction, go through some normalcy, but everybody's just very uneasy about it. I don't know, it added a lot of realness to I think where the show was going, what was happening in that situation with the impending bombs and when it was going to drop. Maybe too, because we know as audience members what's about to happen for sure. Like I guess they were still, maybe it won't, maybe it will. They still have that hope, and we all have that dire understanding that any second we're going to see some big explosion in the back, and sure enough, we do. So I think the way they set the world very early on, like you said in that first episode, does a fantastic job. And I do like that they started pre-bombs dropped as far as kicking off the story, and then doing a big time jump right after. I thought that played out really well.
Mm. And then like immediately after that, again, they do more, um, you know, kind of adding to the look and feel. They do more with the opening to when Lucy gets introduced, because then it starts off exactly where most Fallout games start off with, which is the what is it, the special thing where you get to kind of set your attributes and introduce to your character
Hmm.
and kind of and you get to learn about Lucy and her parents, which if you've played a Fallout game, you know the main protagonist always has parental issues of some kind. Your parents are always going up missing. I think that's literally happened in every game, right? 3, your dad
Oh, I
goes
don't think that's
missing.
that's not really how the Courier New
I
Vegas
guess,
takes place.
yeah, that's
I
Obsidian.
think it's more 3 and 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, don't you throw in Obsidian on the bus. I don't know. Maybe not the most prevalent theme in all of them, but definitely one that pops up a fair
I'm really
amount.
glad Obsidian gets a. We'll talk about it, but I'm really happy with them getting like a little, not a little, a call out in this game, you know, or in this TV show.
Yeah. Um, what else? So I do like as far as, and this one thing kind of contradicts my concern earlier, like how this they very much did a one to one, just how it looked and felt from the games, it kind of spit that onto the screen, which once again I was overly concerned about, but I thought they did a really good job. Whether it be CGI or just art direction or costumes, like it was all once again pretty much ripped straight out of the game. I'm sure they adjusted some stuff, but you look at the vault suit and you're like, yep, that's exactly what that needs to look like. You look at the power armor, like, yep, that's what that needs to be, and it plays very honestly on screen. I think part of it too is because these characters, I mean, they play it very truthfully, right? They're taking everything very seriously. This is exactly just how their lives play out. These
It's
are
a
the
very like
types of
sanitized, like happy-go-lucky, like perfect society kind of thing they have going on.
yeah. So even though it feels odd, like if you think about it from like a real world perspective, or you think about it in the games, like they play it very honestly, and I think that ownership of the absurdity of kind of what's going on really helps a lot. I like too. There's active use of the Pit Boy. Like we get to see it, and we straight up see the UI on the Pit Boy, and them interacting with
Her
data
brother's playing the
streams,
game.
and
Her brothers are
yeah,
playing the game at the table while they're talking.
I think occasionally that looks a little awkward. I think there was one scene where like they show a picture of her dad digitized on her Pit Boy. Just something about that read a little awkward, but I really appreciated that they did kind of work in that technology that we're used to using in the games directly into here. We saw the same kind of weaponry. I saw plasma and energy weapons. I saw the big like oh, what's the rifle that the Brotherhood used? I don't even recall, but all the
Mm.
weaponry looked really good.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not even gonna try. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's all good.
And did you notice
Um,
Coop's I don't know if they I'm sure they meant to, but Coop's cowboy costume at the beginning is blue and yellow,
mm, yeah.
and we'll get into it, but there's a lot of connectivity between Coop and vault-tec and all that stuff, which again, we'll get into that. But
Yeah.
again, yeah.
The other thing I will mention before we get too far into presentation, they brought the songs back, the tracks, like
Oh yeah, I was just
immediately,
gonna
like in the
mention
first
that.
episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I can't remember which games. I always, I think, relate them to Fallout 3. I'm sure some of them were New Vegas or other entries as well. But man, just hearing that music, like it immediately, for me, makes you want to hop right back to the games. But it just fits the world so well. Like, I'm glad the music wasn't missing, or they didn't maybe try to have licensing issues or anything with any of it. Like having that music, I think, was crucial, really landing that feel that you needed to make this really feel like a
Well,
Fallout game,
well, cause
or
in the
Fallout NT, I should say.
games, like I hate to say it, but the music almost plays as another
Its own
character.
character. Yeah.
Yeah, because like the world is so lone, you're so by yourself at times, unless you have dog meat or somebody. But like
Hmm.
other than that, yeah, you're kind of walking around and that music kind of replays in your head, and it makes sense that the music would keep replaying because they have no access to like a library or the history of music, so they probably only have a select number of records or
Hmm.
something, and it's just like, well, we can only keep playing these 10 songs.
Yeah, and this is a broader conversation about just the music in Fallout games in general, but I love the juxtaposition between this very lively kind of, big band kind of music that they have, and then just the desperate situation you're in out in the wasteland where everything's destroyed and you got this happy-go-lucky music. Like, I just love that. And this is once again kind of getting on topic a little bit, but when we talked Starfield X amount of months ago, one of the biggest complaints we had was there was no
It was
music. Like,
boring. Yeah.
especially in a Bethesda game, like that's to me a staple. Like you walk around, you have this, almost like a soundtrack of the wasteland. Or I expected something similar in that game as well. I know different game, different motivations, etc. But I think you hit it really well. This is a character in Fallout, so having that music right was really really crucial.
And then you also have like the hidden messaging in some of the songs. I don't want to set the world
Hmm.
on fire. It's like every song. It definitely feels like when they made the games, they were like, "Oh, this song has a lyric that has to do with
Yeah.
post-apocalypse or something terrible. Let's throw that in there."
I love that they also had a radio DJ later on. Granted, he was only
Oh
playing
yeah,
fiddle music, but I don't know. It threw me back to Three Dog vibes just a
yeah.
little bit. Like I don't know. It once again that goes to the world building that this show committed to kind of stick with the game as well as kind of build upon that stuff. So I don't know. This show just really did a great job to feel like it was a piece of the Fallout universe. It didn't
Hmm.
feel like it didn't fit or it was missing something. It felt like a game. It felt like a new entry in the series, and I think I really really appreciate how they kind of threaded that line, even though it was a whole different medium.
And I liked how the DJ, he was complaining that nobody appreciated his music and wanted to come see him, but then you had all these dead
He
bodies
couldn't
littered.
take criticism.
Yeah, he was like, it's
Well, that was the thing. He
ridiculous.
couldn't take criticism. He wanted everybody to love
Oh,
it. So anybody who came, he'd kill them.
stupid. Yeah,
That's
pretty
why
fun.
Thaddeus is sitting there afraid to say anything bad about fiddle music. He's like, yeah, yeah, I hear the mid tones. Yeah, of
Oh, I
course.
didn't
Because
catch
he
on
didn't
to
want to
that.
get thrown into a trap. Yeah,
Ridiculous.
yeah.
Oh, there was one thing
Presentation, top notch.
I did want to say. Now, I'm sure there's got to be more to this, but no Ron Perlman. We do get the line at a point in the show,
Mhm.
but Ron Perlman generally opens most mainline Fallout games. I'm sure in the, you know, deep down within the show, there was probably contractual stuff. And I know he hasn't been super popular as well the last couple of years. I know he's been, I don't know, I don't want to say canceled, but he's been ticking some people off
Mm.
with things. But yeah, I'd be curious what exactly was going on there, like why exactly you couldn't get Ron back.
I didn't miss it. I think I don't know if this would have played differently if I would have cared, but I guess one benefit to not having it is it makes everything feel a little more real, if that makes sense. Like when you have a show that has a narrator over it, you feel like we're just watching a story
He didn't need to
unfold, right?
narrate the
Like
whole
someone's
show.
telling you a story.
I would have liked. I would have just wanted the
But even like
line
when
at the
you open
beginning.
a show like it, I don't know. I don't miss it. I
Fair
kind of
enough.
like that it all just kind of played out with the characters that were in there. You could take it either way. I don't think it's a bad thing or a good thing necessarily. If you missed it, that's fair. I don't think it had to be there though necessarily.
Yeah.
I do think the line needed to be there.
Oh,
I'm
the
glad the
line.
line was
You do
there.
get the line, yeah, at the very end, which was nice. I enjoyed that little
Mhm.
part. Um. So I don't know. I guess we kind of touched on some of the. I mean, we did touch on world building. That's kind of what they were going for. So we want to get into some characters, some kind of
Yeah,
some of the people. What did you think of our main protagonist, Lucy or Ella? What
I
is her
thought
name?
she was
Ella
great.
Perling? Ella
Something like that,
Ella
yeah.
Purnell.
No, I thought Lucy was a fantastic character. Yeah, I said once again, I think they made a smart decision, not trying to retell a story, just go completely unique. I mean, fits the Fallout world, gives them a lot of flexibility. But Lucy, I think, was a great character. And I think, and this is going off on a bit of a tangent, I'm going to say it anyway. In recent years in media, there's been a big push to have these like strong female characters and like rewriting certain female roles
The
to
whole
be different than they
Mary
traditionally
Sue
would.
conversation's been everywhere.
Yeah. Well, how they like would like what is the movie coming out? Snow White. That's not gonna be traditional Snow White. It's gonna be her as basically this girl boss, and she does like it's a completely different retelling of the character. And when people kind of criticize that, they come on like, oh no, you just hate strong female characters. It has nothing to do with that. I think the issue here, I think Lucy is a great showing for this. People love strong female characters that are written that way from the beginning. Like we don't have any kind of issue with a female being a strong character, but let it be its own character. When you have to rewrite other characters to fit this agenda, whatever it may be, and I know I'm ranting a little bit.
No, it's
I
fine.
think that's where we have issues. I think Lucy had a great narrative arc or character arc, I should say. She wasn't a Mary Sue necessarily. I mean, she was clearly, built up to be a very intelligent, capable character, but she had flaws as well. And I think they just really sold her really, really well. She was relatable. I think we can understand where her naivete came from, but as well as understand how she was able to kind of get over certain situations. And you could argue there was definitely some contrivances and coincidences that
Well,
helped her kind of get through situations, but
at least in the beginning, when they're down in the vault, right when the episode opens, it shows her like she's at the top of her class in terms of like everything she's involved. She's like she's
super
probably
extracurricular. Yeah.
yeah. She's like I'm not a very good shot, but she shoots in the middle of a target like 4 times in a row, and it's like she's good
Hmm.
at martial arts and stuff. It's like at least, and you could. It's a video. It's also based on a video game where you can set your special attributes as well. So you could argue
Yeah.
that like maybe she had higher attributes than most other people. It's whatever,
You saw that the special stats technically got, I don't want to say leaked, but they have the characters I think
I
you mentioned
saw.
in Fallout Shelter now.
Yeah.
So they technically have canon special stats you can go and pull up. Which I don't know. I really like the way they did Lucy. Yeah, she's naive, so she has some points in the story where yeah, things don't go her way, and she does, find a way out of those situations. But I think it's all reasonable, and even the parts I think are coincidental, how she luckily gets out of certain situations, I could just argue out her luck stat was a little
I was
higher,
gonna
and
say
I
there's
think
even a
that
luck
helped
stat. Yeah,
rationalize it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's whatever.
Um, but yeah, I even think the way she kind of evolves throughout the story. I don't want to get into all the story beats just yet, but I think the actress did a phenomenal job. I think there were a lot of emotional moments when she has some revelations about what's happening, as she realizes what this wasteland's really about and how she needs to adapt to it and how she doesn't need to in certain aspects, hold strong to her morals. I don't know. Great character. I thought she was really written really well. I definitely want to see how she grows and moves into the next season for sure. What were your thoughts on her?
I really liked her. I mean, again, I think you mentioned it, but I just because she had all those higher stats and she seemed like she was kind of pretty well off to go off into the wasteland.
Mhm.
I still feel like there's lots of moments of her kind of effing up and not
Yeah.
totally approaching things the way like this if she wouldn't have had Max with her on the bridge scene, she would have been captured and eaten by those two
Mhm.
fiends. So it's like she's not invincible, and
Yeah. She
she's
wasn't
so
perfectly
naive.
capable all the way through.
Yeah, yeah, stuff like that. She would have easily been demolished, or I mean, shoot, the Cooper the Ghoul. If it wasn't for Max have been there in that town, she would have been demolished. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? It's like I don't know. I really enjoyed her character, and overall, I will say I really enjoyed like her family, the characters they got to play her family as well. Getting Kyle MacLachlan from freaking Dune in here was
Mhm.
super fun. I loved. We'll get into him, but one of my favorite characters was actually her brother Norm. I actually really liked
Yeah.
Norm throughout the
He
entire.
surprised me a lot, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He starts out as kind of like this whimpering, coward, and then as like kind of similar to her. Um, I'm trying to think if they could have worked that in where both of them have similar traits because of the father. Like, you know what I mean? Where it could have been DNA
Yeah.
wise that they were like more adventurous than other people that were down in the vault. I don't know. I don't know if I'm reaching for anything there,
I
but
think both of them were probably more motivated too. Like, I mean, they both had similar rationales for wanting to figure things out. They both had their father just pulled away from them, and no one's really answering that. So, I don't know. I think there was that very personal motivation for both to figure out how to resolve from their different perspectives that, issue, situation, so they could find some kind of closure with their father. So, but no, I think they did a great job with him, kind of flipping the general trope where you have this nerdy, younger, kind of cowardly brother, but really kind of, stepping out into his own, and even more so than some of the other characters that you think would have inside of the vault. So no, I thought he was done really well as well. Also,
yeah. And then I don't know, kind of digging in further. I mean, we got to meet what was it? Cooper. Cooper was
hmm Cooper slash Ghoul.
yeah. I would venture to say I actually found a lot of his story and plot line that involved the pastime to be his more
Mhm.
interesting aspect more than I
Oh
mean I
sure.
guess he's kind of one note as a ghoul. He's just a well, he's not completely one note. They try and flesh him out as much as they can, but he's kind of just an a-hole douchebag who's just looking out for numero uno and kind of understands how
Well,
the
you're seeing
world
him at this
operates.
one snapshot in his life. Like,
Hmm.
a lot of his background, whatnot, has led him to be this incarnation of himself. And looking back, there's more time jumps, right? So you see his character kind of progress into where he's at. But I like that kind of storytelling where it's kind of two stories from the same character kind of going at the same pace till they meet at the same conclusion. Westworld did the same thing, if you recall that with
Same
with
directors.
yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. But how they handled the cowboy in that, like he was just kind of
Hmm.
this douchebag at the beginning of it, and then you realize who he was and how he came to be that person towards the end of it. So, no, his story, I mean, has the most I think going on because it has all the pre-war stuff as well. You're getting then a lot of the revelations from vault-tec and their interaction with his wife. Like, there's a lot of side characters there. They're kind of building that out as well. But I think he had the most intricate story, at least for his direct involvement. Lucy was really just kind of, a what's a good way to say this? The audience member in her story a little bit, kind of figuring things out as she went. But the ghoul slash Cooper was very active in the whole process. So kind of figuring out what his overall motivation was, and some of it I think was pretty obvious. He's probably trying to figure out where his family's at because
Hmm.
obviously they're not there in the post apocalypse, but I don't know. I think they handled him really well. The one thing I will say, and this is very superficial, but this kind of goes back to like the pre materials that came out for the show aired, when I first saw the ghoul, I don't know if I mentioned this,
He
he
looked
looked just
terrible.
like,
Yeah.
well, I don't think he looked terrible. He looked like Deadpool Ryan Reynolds to me, and I couldn't shake that. Because they have some similar features. Like if you even look at it on the
Oh,
background,
he
the
does look. I
eyes have
kind of
that.
see it. Yeah.
I think they both have, like similar eye structures. Now, when you look at the actual actor, like when he's playing Cooper and he's not all ghoulified, of course he looks completely different. But as a ghoul, I couldn't help but see Ryan Reynolds half the time. But that's more of just a personal issue I had.
And
It really
since you
wasn't anything negative or anything.
and since you brought it up, it does make sense because I was, talking about his one note personality in terms of the modern time or the now time. But you're right though. Like he's not only meant to kind of be a representation of the total dichotomy of what he was. He's also supposed to represent where Lucy could go if
Mhm.
from her being out in the wasteland. Like you know what I mean. He not only is a dichotomy of like his previous self, but he's also meant to kind of represent, oh, this is what Lucy could be or what the wasteland will turn her into
Yeah.
eventually. So I get where you're coming from with that.
And to be fair, I mean, I know he comes across one note, but honestly, especially you see it as the end, there's parts about what he's trying to accomplish, I think kind of recontextualize events that happen. Like he could have killed Lucy immediately. Like his
Mm-hmm.
reasoning for keeping Lucy alive, I don't think was super strong for a while. If anything, he helped keep her alive longer than needed to because I think he understood who she was to a certain extent. Like he understood the name drop when she mentioned Lucy McLean, and he's thinking of who that correlates
Oh yeah,
to.
he even
And then
says
that
at the
play
end, he's like, ever since I heard your last name, I wondered, could it be? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that changes it from not feeling so one note. He's not just this, jerk that's out there just slaughtering everybody in front of him to meet his figure out what his end game is. He's also adjusting and manipulating and even helping Lucy to a certain extent to help her realize who she should be, even though you don't see that at first. He once again has more context of who she is, who her relatives may be, what's happened in the past. And I think when you get to that final episode and all those revelations kind of come out, it somewhat recontextualizes who he is as a ghoul just a little bit. But
And I think
I thought he
his
was handled well, a complex character.
I really think like you really see like some of his remains of like like a humanity almost to an extent the most with the dog. I feel like because
Hmm.
he you could definitely tell he's like a dog person because in his past life he had a dog and he was this whole plot
Roosevelt was his
line.
dog or something.
Yeah, his whole plot line where vault-tec was saying no dogs, no pets, and he was all like that was
Yep.
like his beginning of him being mad at his wife for working with vault-tec, and they were like it was like a whole dialogue scene where he's like, well, who's to say? What are they? Who's the president of this thing? Who's telling me I can't bring in a
Yep.
dog? I don't know. Very interesting.
Yep. Who else?
We didn't get to
And
talk
then we
about
have Matt.
Max. Yeah,
Yeah.
which I'll bring it up because this is something I wanted to bring up in our pre-talk. But I didn't hate his character, but I personally felt like him and the Brotherhood of Steel was probably the weak point. Well, not weak point, but weakest point that I felt as in terms of all of it, all the plot lines. Because I don't know if you guys know, but essentially throughout the show, there's like four main plot points. There's four main characters that you kind of follow. You follow Lucy, and they all kind of coincide. They connect at some point. But you have
Mm.
Max, Lucy, the Ghoul, and then Norm. Um, and those are like your four main different plot elements. And for me personally, I felt like Max was probably the weakest. I mean, I do feel like they do build him up similar to Lucy, where he becomes, not so much a coward and becomes stronger. And I don't know. What did you think about Max? I'm struggling to think about like some of the stuff I didn't really like with him. Um,
He takes a little longer, I think, to warm up to and read a little bit. But part of that is he comes across from a very different background than any of the characters too, like being raised in the Brotherhood of Steel after surviving the Shady Sands incident that we'll talk about in a little bit. I don't know. He's a little hard to read because he's a lot more stoic too, and I think sometimes you might read that as maybe low intelligence,
he
maybe
survives it.
cowardice, maybe
He survives it like Indiana Jones in the stupid fridge.
yeah, in the fridge.
Yeah.
Like I said, point it's hard I think to understand, and even towards the end, there's time I couldn't tell. If, okay, is he just being dumb? Is he being afraid? Is he being like thought provoking here at this moment, trying to think through the situation? it's hard to read him. And I don't know if that's just the performance, if that's the way the character's written. It's a little hard to say, but he's also very awkward too, right? Like he's not overly exposed to some of these other interactions like Lucy and whatnot. So I didn't dislike him. I mean, certainly warmed up to him more and more as the show went on. I think it was hard for me to understand exactly what his motivation was and where his like morality kind of sat for a while. Like at first, he's very much just like, yeah, I gotta take care of myself. But you also didn't know if he was the one who injured his friend at the beginning. Was he this cutthroat, merciless guy who only cares about
Which that was
himself?
a
What is
very
he just
odd
wrapped up in weird
thing at
situations?
the very end where the friend is like, "No, wait, I injured myself because I'm scared." And I was like,
Yeah,
eh.
and even that, I wasn't sure if that was truthful at first until like the very last conversation they have. So I guess that's my issue, not issue, but the tricky part about him is hard to read where he sits as far as like motivation and what he wants in this entire process until a little bit later on. I think after he kind of gets up with meets up with Lucy and they have a few moments where they kind of gain some trust and they kind of open up to each other. That helps kind of paint him as a little more well-rounded as far as knowing
Yeah.
what he wants to do, who he wants to be with, all that kind of stuff. So
He
that's my only issue with him. But once again, he's coming from the closest thing we have to a military in this, which is often a lot more stoic. They force him to be a lot more introverted in many ways. So I don't know. I didn't dislike it, I guess is what I'm saying. I think you probably took it more negatively. I was at least more open to figure out okay, where they taken this character, but it did take a hot minute.
he actually had I'll talk about the good about him, but he actually had one of my favorite scenes in the entire show, which was the whole the scene with him and his what is it? What's the Titan? Titus? Is that the name of his
Squire. Oh, Titus. Yeah.
Titus? Him and
Like
Titus
Titus.
when they go down and they get into the cave and all of that stuff that goes on with the
Hmm.
Yao Guai and everything. Like that's one of my
Yep.
favorite scenes in the entire show because like uh shoot, let me reset this. But yeah, that was one of my favorite scenes because throughout like his entire like mysticism and ideal of like what the what's the name of the
The
character,
Knights.
the knights, his entire like world and thought process about the knights and about the Brotherhood of Steel kind of comes
Kind
tumbling
of starts
down
falling apart there. Yeah.
because he views them as like these mystical, like these are like your heroes, these are the people that are going to save the
Well, it was what
wasteland.
saved him
Yeah.
from the Shady Sands, essentially. So yeah, I think that idealistic, perspective of him, it set up how his character was going to adjust from his experience out in the wasteland. So I guess one thing that comes across a little weird with him too. They clearly wrote him with a lower intelligence stat. I mean, it's actually even true if you look at the Fallout Shelter like
Is it
special listing
really?
for him.
Okay.
He's got lower intelligence than the others. So honestly, if you contextualize it that way, yeah, he's not quite as quick as the others, but I don't know. I liked his character towards the end of it. I thought he was a little slow at times to kind of figure out what his motivation should be, but other than that, I thought his character was fun. I also agree that the Knight Titus scene was really good. Um,
The part with
I,
Titus seeing the Yao Guai and just turning around, yeah, he's like, oh fuck, 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 fuck,
yeah,
fuck, 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 and he's just running away, and I'm like, okay, that's totally out of the games. You know, you like seeing
hmm
a Deathclaw or seeing a Yao Guai, and you're just like,
yeah, being
and you're
his
under, you don't have
just
weapons or
nope out.
something. You're
Yeah,
just like, no, 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 no. That was pretty great.
yep. And then there were a whole slew of side characters. We'll be here all night if we go into those. But I will say most of the characters are all written really well. A lot of them had their moments to shine, and I thought they were acted really well. Performances across the board I thought were really good in
We
this show.
didn't.
There,
Probably one of the more important ones is we didn't get a ton on that scientist guy. We just know he may have developed a new form. Spoilers. I don't know if we mentioned that, but we know he developed like a new form of energy, some sort of new form of
I don't think
something,
he straight up did. Like, I mean, if you're looking at the story, the
or
whole
maybe he
point or
stole it.
ending. This is jumping way ahead. Well, the whole thing was there's this cold fusion reactor which is supposed to produce infinite energy. That's kind of the MacGuffin in this whole show. And it started with Moldaver. Like, if you go back, she was the one originally working on it pre-war, and then vault-tec came
Hmm.
through and stole it all or bought it up.
Ah,
So
I missed
it's
that.
her technology who now has some will trickle down through the apocalypse that's now landed with the Enclave, and I guess this Enclave scientist had some kind of ties to get back in connection with the NCR. I don't know. Some of that, once again, is open ended, which that's one thing I do like about the show. It doesn't directly spell out every single narrative beat. And we can talk about that when we get to the story. Like, there's some threads that are left a little open, which I think is a smart decision, but we can come back to that in a little bit.
Yeah, and there's other side characters. I mean, one of my favorites was the chicken humper, the
Yep.
freaking the medicinal medic, whatever
Mm-hmm.
he was supposed to be. His opening scene is so great, where the two guys are fighting and Max shows up and saves him, and he thinks he's done good, and the guy's like, "Oh well, I guess it's fine. You can let him go. He was screwing my chickens."
Yeah.
uh,
There's a lot of weird, like there's a lot of one-off weird characters like that, which fits the game so well
yeah,
too. Like
oh
there's so
yeah.
many just like you'll see a random side character that'll say one or two weird lines, and this is very much a comparison to that. But then you have a lot of other really well characters that got written. I don't want to say written, but had larger roles like all the Vault Overseers. You had Betty, and you had
Oh, I liked all them. Yeah,
Lucy's dad. And even the other the other two Vault guys who were trying to be the overseer
trying
and
to
they
be.
lost.
Yeah,
You
do I
have
have their
the eye
names?
patch chick.
I have
We,
Woody. Woody is one of them. I didn't get the other guy. iPad chick. That was oh, I forgot her. I don't think I should have added more characters. I know there's Betty. There's
I don't think we
Woody.
need to.
No.
There's a bunch of characters in here. But I guess my point being is all the characters, like when they got a moment to do something in the story, they all shined really well. Performances came through really strongly. I think they were written really well. The dialogue was done well. So I guess, especially in a series that should be so focused on character interaction, like that's how the games always are, is going finding cool characters and interacting with them. Like they did a really good job, I think, reiterating that in the TV show.
And there's a really interesting plot line that they end up going through with Norm, where because of him going through research, he learns about a connective tissue between all of former residences of one of the other vaults, Vault 31, and
Hmm.
that becomes a big plot line where it's like, why is it every time all the overseers have all come from Vault 31 when we don't even know, we don't even communicate with anybody over there and stuff, or the overseer is the only one who does apparently, but uh, we actually didn't even talk about the events of 32, because that's like the whole origin of why
Or
Norm
we
and them
want to
are
go
pushed
down
out.
story just yet, or do we want to hit any other character specific stuff we want to mention? Because once we start a story, there's
No, you're
a whole
right.
bunch of threads we can dig into.
Any other major characters we could talk? I mean, with the Brotherhood of Steel leader, what was his? I don't even remember his name. The old
Elder or whatever, I
elder
don't know.
Steel. Yeah, he didn't
Yeah.
really do a heck of a whole
Well, I
lot.
guess
He's
that's right. That leads us into maybe so much not individual characters, but let's talk factions for a few minutes because that's another huge aspect of Fallout in general. Is all the factions, how they're interacting. That's really what kind of plays out all the narrative stuff as well as how each faction is going to interact. And they definitely had several factions represented here. Not everyone in the game, of course, which I think is good. They kind of fit,
well.
you
Can I
grabbed a subset of them.
Can I just real
Yeah.
quick mention I like with the Brotherhood of Steel faction, I like how they like again, I like how they make them seem as though they're this big wonderful group, and just kind of slowly as the show goes on, you're just like, "Oh, these guys kind of suck. They're really not that smart. They're kind of led by dummies." I don't know, like the way they,
Mhm.
like, even the Titus guy, like before he dies, he's like talking about how he's not really a believer and he thinks the group sucks, and which I guess I
Mhm.
forgot to mention that was acted by Michael Rappaport, which I was kind of
Yeah.
shocked he was in this show. I was just like, why is this New Yorker? I mean, I like Michael Rappaport, but it was just an odd. I mean, it was an odd casting, but it ended up making sense because they have to find someone jerky enough to cause Max to not want to want to heal him. But yeah, again,
Sure.
I liked how the Brotherhood of Steel, they make them like they're supposed to have like this weird idealized view of what the world should be, but they're just kind of douchebags and jerks. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what I liked about this show. So, 'cause I didn't even realize this till after I had played more Fallout games. Like, play Fallout 3, the Brotherhood are kind of the good guys. Right? If you kind of go through that, like, they are, I mean, not perfect, but morally, they're kind of the ones you want to get behind to kind of, get Liberty Prime up and running and save the water, et cetera, et cetera. And even in Fallout 4, although they're a little more jerky, they still are, I think, a little more morally, I guess I want to say the correct moral route to go in those games, but they still seem like the good guys. I think though, if you play the older Fallout games, like when I played one, the Brotherhood they're not the good guys, not necessarily. So I think this show did a good job of finding that line and threading it where the Brotherhood, I mean, yeah, they at least have some kind of, what's a good way? I don't want to say moral anymore, so I'm trying not to go down that route. I guess there was at least enough gray area with what the Brotherhood was trying to accomplish that I think it painted them more accurately to what the series tries to paint them
They're like the
as.
closest
They can
thing
be jerky,
to.
they can be heroic, they can be somewhere in between, which I think was good. They weren't just all one way, which I think was very helpful to
They're,
kind of give them a good roundabout perspective.
they're just like this really thin, like really, really thin line of like the last remnants of like a police force. They're like, they're like the one
But
thing
they're
that's,
not.
well, they're trying to be. That's what
That's
I
not what they're
mean. Is
supposed to be, but they're not. That's not the Brotherhood's goal is to police. You're almost thinking more Enclave. Like Enclave
really,
is
was
more
that the
about
Enclave?
governance.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Enclave, which is briefly brought up in this show, but not maybe in the same
Wasn't
form
the
that you're used
Enclave
to
in the
from the
games? They
games.
were always had robots, right? That's how they always battled. Was using automatons and stuff,
No,
right? No, I
no,
don't
they have
remember the
people.
games that
Their
well.
power armor looked very different. Like they had Enclave armor. They had like they almost look like insect armor. If that makes sense. That's how I kind
Mm,
of
okay.
looked at it. Um, oh, where was I going with this? But the Enclave in this game is less so that military entity. They had more just the scientific representation. That's where the scientist at the very beginning came from. He
When he
escaped the
gets dodged
Enclave.
by a
Um,
billion bullets somehow.
yeah, that was probably one of the most unrealistic moments. Or
I thought it
dodge
was
that,
funny
or
though. At least they used it as like a logo, kind of. I was just like, I viewed it more as a
I
joke
guess.
than a, like the gun
Yeah,
had like no aiming perk or something.
yeah, that's fair. But no, the Enclave, as far as I understand, they're supposed to be kind of the remnants of the American government, what's kind of left of them. So you don't get a huge picture of that in the show. There's just a little bit of, once again, like the science or research aspect of it. The Brotherhood is more about controlling pre-war tech. That's kind of their job. They utilize that
Hmm.
to, benefit the wasteland, but how they see fit. That's kind of their main goal and objective. So it's less about policing. I mean, maybe to a certain extent. I guess if we're thinking about Fallout 4, they take maybe a little more of that route, potentially. But I don't know. I guess what I'm getting at is I like the way the Brotherhood was not just, these are the good guys. Because some of the games have kind of done that. Like Fallout 3 was very much, you want to be on the Brotherhood of Steel side unless you're trying to be a douche in the whole game, right? Whereas this are like, no, Brotherhood's got some problems. You can clearly see that their structure's off, their motivation's off, their people in the organization are not too pleased to be in the organization. So I don't know. I liked how morally gray or ambiguous they were through a lot of it.
No, I agree. So who do we talked about the Brotherhood. There's not really much to say about the Enclave. I mean, we really, like you said, we only really see the one science outpost, and
Yeah.
then there's like a couple references. That's about it. We do get to see a little bit of the NCR, right? We get to see with Moldaver.
Actually, a good amount of it, yeah.
Yeah,
I think realizing that that is the NCR, and that's one of the big narrative reveals. We can, I don't know if we want to get into that yet, but NCR is a pretty big presence there. A lot of this show is kind of about, at least as you dig into it, it's kind of about the fall of the NCR.
but
And you'll even, if you
The NCR in the games is kind of like the best representation of like society rebuilding in like a positive way, right? Generally, like NCR is generally like
generally,
we're trying to create a society again, which that doesn't go all that well. But
yeah, I mean, I think the important thing to remember about all of them is no one faction is the good faction, right? All of them have their ups and downs. Same thing with the NCR. So not everything NCR did in this show was even completely, morally in the clear. But I think you're right as far as the main objective. They are trying to rebuild society and do what's best for the common good of everyone. So but this show really takes a lot to kind of dig into who the NCR was and their downfall to a certain
Shady
extent. The whole Shady
Sands and all
Sands
that,
incident.
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how much you know about Shady Sands. I know it's not a big talking point in Fallout 3 or
It is.
4.
I know it's more
It
of a two, right? In Fallout 2, it's like the whole.
it's definitely a 1. It's like a big thing in 1. A little bit in 2. From what as I didn't play much of 2, but I'm pretty sure that's mentioned at least to a certain extent. New Vegas talks about Shady Sands a little bit
Yeah.
towards the end as far as like what it is, and it's kind of like I can't recall. And somebody I'm sure who knows more about it will chime in. I think it's kind of the pseudo capital of the NCR for a while,
Hmm.
or it's one of their major kind of cities. Um, and I know that's actually a big issue that people are taking with this show. And I don't know if you've seen that discourse, but the
Mm-mm.
timeline of where Shady Sands sits and its fall versus New Vegas. Because I said New Vegas talks about Shady Sands as at that time
As it's
still
still
being
around.
this major entity. Yeah. But the timing is really tight here because inside the show, you know, when she's walking through Vault 4 and she's going through the classroom, you see
Yeah,
that
I see the
whiteboard,
flag.
chalkboard.
Mhm.
Yeah. So they're talking about the NCR, and it does mention the fall of Shady Sands. I think it's like, oh, I'm gonna mess up the days, like 2277 or something. But Fallout New Vegas happens at 2280. It's like a 3-year gap here. So a lot of people will be like, oh, well, it says that Shady Sands blew up in 77, but in and what's at New Vegas, they talk about it being a thing. They've retconned New Vegas, and then all these people went down this big rabbit hole. And then Todd Howard had to come out and say, nope, Vegas is still completely canon. When I talk about the fall of Shady Sands, that's not when the big bomb hit. That's like when things started to go wrong. And then the actual
Mm.
bomb that they talk about in the show happens somewhere after New Vegas. So I guess point being, it's all still canon, but a lot of people got really ticked off because they misunderstood that timeline.
Which that's actually an
But
interesting thing you brought up, because I think, just to throw it in, Todd Howard had said that he and a bunch of representatives of Bethesda were on set for like every
mhm.
every like writing room type thing. Like they said they wanted to like at least be able to pitch in for, they wanted to fix any canon, stuff like that.
Which I think is really good. I know that can certainly go a negative route when I think, the game developers have too heavy a hand on it and they don't let the actual showrunners create their show. But when you don't have that kind of, oversight, you end up with Halo, where Microsoft or 343 or whoever
Where the
did not really
creators have
care what
never
they
played a
did.
Halo game.
Yeah, and they were proud of the fact that no, we haven't played the Halo games, or we're not trying to make this like the Halo. Like that rubbed me so wrong in so many ways. Even though yes, I think sometimes having the game developers there could come across as overbearing. At the same time, I think it was really helpful to make sure that yes, we didn't have weird canon events because from the very beginning they were saying we want this to basically be kind of your Fallout 5. I mean, not necessarily entitled, but as far as a continuation of that story, this is part of
It
that
kind of is,
world.
because it
And
tells
for
the
that to
story
work,
of a couple new vaults. So it basically is a new
yeah,
entry.
and it is. And I think it's a good one. I think it makes a lot of sense and it builds some different stories out that I think threads that were brought up in older Fallout games and also gives a lot of cool implications for what future Fallout games could be. And we can kind of wrap up with that when we get there. But I don't know where we're going with this. I guess point being
We were just
is
delving
what
into
they
the
did.
NCR.
Yeah, they were really trying to thread the needle there to make that canon line. I am curious if that was a little bit of oops, we made a boo boo kind of thing. Like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have put that chalkboard in there with that timeline. Like, the timeline didn't explicitly say that it wasn't lining up with New Vegas, but it did open up a can of worms. I think they probably could have avoided if they would have presented that a
This
little differently.
this
So,
show, my
oh,
bad, my phone.
leveled up.
this this show actually does a lot for the lore, a lot more than I kind of was
Hmm.
expecting. I know another thing that I haven't seen many people upset about, but apparently it's never really been mapped out, like the entire layout of the location of how many vaults and where they're located. We'll get into this
Mm.
further, but like this show explains,
Shows you
this
a
is
map. Yeah.
shows you a map of how many and where they're at. So
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah.
Which I'll tell you, this is I don't want to dig too far into this, but that it's a really fine line. I think the show needs to thread between giving you some extra details and some cool revelations, but
Telling you
still leaving
everything.
some things open-ended. Yeah, like there's some big things that are almost staples to the Fallout game, like who dropped the bombs. And if they get too heavy-handed and give you all the answers, I feel like that's going to be to the detriment of what the show is trying to do and the Fallout series as a whole. So they've threaded it carefully so far. They've given us a few little nuggets of information that are going to be fun, but there's also a few things they started building into that, depending where they go in season 2, I may not like that direction, but we'll hold off on that. I don't think there's anything else faction-wise to mention. We talked about NCR,
Vault-tec
really
is the
prevalent
only,
role.
which we debate if that's
And
technically
Vault-tec,
of Enclave,
yeah, I don't know if it's
Vault-tec.
really a faction. We can say oh, I don't know, a competing entity in the wasteland. At least as far as how it
Subsidiary.
exists here. Yeah, I don't know how you want to look at it, because they don't really have a lot of presence from the other businesses, if you will. Like, they talk a little bit about Robco and West Tech and a few others, but really it's about Vault-Tec and kind of their motivations pre-war versus what they're currently doing in the post-apocalypse kind of scenario. So, I guess what I'll just say overall, so we don't spend too much time here. I thought the representation of the factions were all really accurate. Yes, they take some time to add some more lore to it, but I don't think anything they really did was unauthentic. I think that would be a bigger concern if like they represented the Enclave as something completely different than what they were supposed to be in the game. Same thing with the NCR and whatnot. And once again, there's a lot of wiggle room there regardless, because like all these factions have a lot of different subsidiaries. Like the Brotherhood had like an East Coast and a West Coast segment of them. They both behave pretty differently.
Hmm.
So once again, fine line to thread, but I think they did a pretty good job here.
I did like, at least with Vault-Tec, that they, I mean, it's hard for them not to do this. It's part of the games, but I at least like that you got to kind of see the continuation of Vault-Tec's purposes with the actual vaults.
Mm.
Like you got to see, like there were episodes that revolved around certain experiments, which that's always something in the games we've always known Vault-Tec was doing. And this show delved deeper into actually, you actually get to see people coming up with ideas of what they want to do with people in the
Mm-hmm.
vaults, which is pretty great. I really like that
And how
aspect.
unsettling that was, honestly.
How
Like,
easily they're
we
talking
always
about
knew,
these experiments.
yeah, like we always knew me they do horrific things in these vaults. I think sometimes you shrug it off as, oh, that was just weird, crazy science experiment they did. But when you actually think through, no, people got in a room and talked about this like they were good ideas, and were so careless about thinking about the impact on other people through it. Like, it definitely paints a different picture about how evil some of these organizations are,
Because there's
not just now, but pre-war.
there's vaults in the lore, man, that are crazy in the games. I mean, I know there's one story of them putting all women and one man in one.
Hmm.
I remember there's another one where it's just one guy and some puppets.
One guy they've cloned a whole bunch of times. Oh yeah, the puppet
The
one.
puppet guy, and you're right, the one where it's just the guy cloned a bunch of
It
himself
was like
into
Dave or something.
a
I don't
Dave or
remember what it
something.
was.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
so many. There's ones of like, I remember in New Vegas there was one where it was like a greenhouse type thing, and
Mm-hmm.
the plant's just overgrown and all the people became like plant monsters inside of it. It's
Yeah.
crazy, crazy. Uh, it's always been something I've kind of had a problem with. Like, don't get me wrong, I love that aspect of the games, but like some of the experiments are like, you really thought that was gonna be beneficial to anything? I don't know.
But maybe they didn't. Like, I think you kind of see the careless kind of, almost like just what if scenarios are playing out. Like they weren't giving them a whole lot of like serious consideration as far as thinking through the morality or the implications of it. They're just like, yeah, let's just do it, and throwing around their power in that way, I think is kind of horrific. But I don't know. I actually really liked that scene, the way it played out, is how casual they all were to talk about these terrible, terrible experiments they were about to perform.
And
So.
Cooper even gets like like he catches on to what's happening. Because I remember there's a part where he's talking with his wife, and his wife tells him, or he's like, "What are you all worried about? We got our spots in a vault already set." And she's like,
Mm,
"Yeah, but not in a good one." And he's like, "It's like,
yeah.
what do you mean not?" And she kind of just walks away after that. And it's like, I mean, we as a viewer are like, "Oh, they must not have been in a." Actually, I think no, Vault 4 is the one that they do a commercial for, and
Hmm.
Cooper does a commercial for, and we end up learning that that one from the
Goes
show,
bad.
Vault 4 does not. Well, it ends up being pretty decent, but the people that initially were in there were not
Yeah.
done well.
I think too, one of the interesting lore things they build off it, and it's still a little open ended, but one of the things that the games never really dove into was, okay, so Vault-Tec did all these crazy experiments with all their vaults, but do they have any oversight or control in the post-apocalypse? Like, are they reviewing these science experiments still? Are they impacting them? And this show kind of hints
Kind
at
of hints at, yeah.
maybe. So there's a couple of routes that we'll get to, like one where there's active members of Vault-Tec in the post-apocalypse, and they also mentioned like a special overseer vault somewhere. I don't think we really saw that necessarily, unless this was the overseer vault
The one that
in the
we see
31, 32,
towards,
33.
well, I think towards the latter end, that is where we start to see where possibly the higher executives are located. Because I think the
Yeah.
vault, well, no spoilers, but like the one we see with some
You
of
can
the
spoil it.
executives in 31, I think those were like lower end executive. Oh no, but
Yeah.
the guy that
They were
runs
buds
vault-tec
buds.
is in there. Buds.
Yeah.
But there had to have been a
Yeah, so I
people
guess that's why I'm
above
saying.
them.
Well, that's why I'm curious. Like, there's the 31, which we'll back up and kind of give the context of this in a minute. But yeah, there's the 31 lower executives that are all kind of taking part one at a time. And then I feel like there probably still is a vault of all vaults out there that is more heavy-handed, that's actually observing all the others. Like, that was kind of the hint that was given when they were discussing it. There was a vault out there that was overseeing all the others, and that's something we've never seen in any of the Fallout games, and never really been alluded to, that there is some entity in vault-tec that is still actively involved in controlling all the other vaults. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
I kind of hope they don't go too far with that in the show, because that'd be a really fun game story beat to actually interact with. But I don't
Yeah. So I think this is the point where we can finally delve into story and kind of get into the what exactly was happening throughout this entire show, right? You want to start getting into that?
Yeah, man. So how do you
It's
want
hard.
to approach this?
Yeah, it's interesting on where to start.
Well, let's I guess do the initial setup. I think the main goal, at least at face value, is you have Vault 33 is where we start in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're in Vault 33, and it's in kind of this happy-go-lucky state at the time being. This is where you meet Lucy and her brother and her dad, the overseer. What was it, Hank? That was his name?
Yep, Hank McLean.
Yeah. And basically, a situation goes wrong. At face value, it looks like raiders have broken in and they kidnap Lucy's dad, as well as kill off half the vault, essentially. So Lucy goes off to try to save her dad because, of course, she does. And then everybody else kind of stays behind. Norm gets left behind because he's afraid to go
A
out there,
coward,
essentially.
self-titled
Yeah.
coward.
And then that kind of branches off into several different story beats. So you have Lucy now trying to figure out where her dad is. Some lady in charge of the Raiders called Moldaver is the one responsible. She's trying to figure out who she is, where she's gone. And then along the way, she meets the ghoul, who is also kind of going down that same path, but for different reasons. You have Norm back in the vault trying to figure out, okay, what's happening in the vault, because some weird stuff starts happening that don't quite add up. Why did these raiders get in here? How'd they get in here? Why are people not doing things about certain things? And then you have Maximus, who is a Brotherhood, starts
We
out as a
talked about.
squire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ends up actually becoming a knight because he lets his old knight die. And he's, once again, they're all trying to go after the same kind of MacGuffins. They all kind of coincide
And
meeting at the same
for a
point.
time, there's a fifth storyline, but that doesn't last very long. There's the kind of MacGuffin. The MacGuffin is the fifth storyline for a time.
Yeah, and that's just kind of setting it up. So the MacGuffin we're talking about, there's a scientist that's from the Enclave that is a little hard to read at first, but when you realize who he is, who's got some kind of technology, who he's trying to get to this Moldaver chick. And we don't really know who Moldaver is, what her motives are, her organization at this point. We just know the least that scientist is trying to get this tech to that person. And spoiler, he doesn't ever make it, but his head does. So, but it ends up all these different entities, the Ghoul, Lucy, Maximus, all are going after this head. Okay, all the different factions, whether it be Brotherhood or Lucy in the Vault or the Ghoul, are all trying to get this head so they can control this technology for various purposes. Brotherhood wants it because they want the tech. Lucy wants it because she's going to be able to use it as a bribe to get her dad back. The Ghoul wants it, who knows? Maybe for money, maybe because he figures out who it's going to and has some other story beats to it. But that's kind of the setup for the whole show. And then hilarity ensues, I guess, from there. It's a big story. Like, it's only 8 episodes long, but
So
they're dense episodes.
something I'm curious about that I didn't realize, but if the ghoul wanted to find, oh, spoilers, a big point of his thing is that he wants to find his family. He, there are things that happen later on in the show that you realize he, leaves his wife, has his daughter. Whole point of that is to find it. But my curiosity is why was he in the coffin again? Why wasn't he out in the open trying to find his family? Was it because he was captured and he was forced to put in
So
there? Because he was like a hired,
maybe.
he was
So
like an
there's a
assassin
lot
for
there.
some big guy or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I think happens before he gets ghoulified that we don't really understand. We also know he's trying to not go feral by continually getting a certain serum to keep himself kind of sane.
I
So I don't know
think
if
it
that
was
had
just
anything to do with
Radaway.
that.
I think it was just like little vials of
No,
Radaway. Was it?
I don't think it was Radaway. I think it was something.
Hmm.
I mean, I could be wrong. Um, I don't know. I didn't
It
catch
could
that.
have.
I
It
don't
could
think
have
it was
been.
Radaway.
That could have been that stuff that the crazy guy injects the Thaddeus with. That's probably that same stuff.
I don't think that's it either. I don't know.
Hmm.
I think it was a different concoction personally, but
Something new.
there's not a lot to go off of there. That's kind of a new thing. I don't recall that in any of the games, unless I'm really missing something where there's something that prevents you from going feral. I think it used to be as a thing that some ghouls were lucky and didn't go feral, or it took them longer. But apparently, there's now some kind of serum that can prevent you from going feral. And I
Hmm.
don't know. We'll see how big of a story beat that becomes. Um, but I guess the other aspect of the story that's kind of playing out. So you have the ghoul, but what we also get introduced to is the ghoul prior to being a ghoul, back pre-war when he was a person. That's the Cooper Harris. Is that what his name?
Cooper or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we get his whole story, and he is a Hollywood actor who's married to a lady that works at vault-tec. They have a
High
kid, and
executive
the
at
show
Vault-Tec.
opens. Yeah. And the show actually opens, that jumps around in time a lot. Like, it actually opens right as the bombs are dropping, and then it hops to him being a ghoul. Then a lot of flashbacks occur where it's him prior to the bombs dropping, kind of building up to that moment. Man, and there's just a lot there because he starts learning about what his wife is doing, what her role is at Vault-Tec, what Vault-Tec is. Man, I just don't know if we have time to even go through the whole narrative. There, like now, I'm actually thinking through it. There's just so
We don't
much
have to
there. I don't
go
know. How
through
do you
the
want to
entire thing.
tackle this?
I'm okay with just kind of tackling it like the character you were just talking about. Cooper is such a fascinating character because of his like. I think they have him as like he's like the actor of the time. He is like one of the biggest actors. And as it
Yep.
comes out that because of his wife's connections with Vault-Tec, he is like his one of his costumes from a movie he was in is like the origin of the color scheme for the suits, and then he is the origin of the thumbs up. He comes up with the idea of the Vault Boy thumb up sign and everything, and
It becomes kind of the poster boy for Vault-Tec. Not really thinking about it
he
being a
does
negative thing. He's
commercials.
like,
Yeah,
well, yeah, like it's a sponsorship. It's like I don't really care. But then he finds a lot of his other Hollywood, cohorts and other actors. They're kind of seeing some negative here. Like they get a little more political with the whole
someone
process,
gets
which
fired,
kind of pulls him in.
called a communist or something.
Yeah. But basically, the wool starts getting, pulled away from his eyes a little bit. And this is where, and this is, I guess, jumping a little bit, but the Moldaver chick we talked about, who's the one in the apocalypse that stole Lucy's dad, we find out was alive pre-war, or at least pre-bombing. Like, she's the one that's heading up a lot of research and development for, like, this cold fusion technology, other stuff, and Vault-Tec's, like, bought her out, and she's seeing all these shady aspects of what Vault-Tec is doing.
We don't get it. We
And
don't get it
she's
explained what she is because she also survives 250 some
we
odd
do not figure
years.
out. We're assuming probably cryo because that. I mean, man, jumping ahead, but a cryo is definitely a way that a lot of people kind of get kept through from Vault-Tec into the
But
post-apocalypse. Like
wouldn't
their upper
Hank
management
would
gets
have
thrown in
known if
there.
she was in that cryo because he was from 31, so maybe a different vault she was in. Because that was only Vault-Tec executives, right? Was
Yeah, I mean,
31?
it doesn't mean she was in. Yeah, Vault-Tec's not the only one who had cryo. Like, she could have been
Yeah.
frozen from any other entity. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of question marks still, which I'm glad. I'm glad there's some open-endedness here. But point being is somehow she makes it through all the way to the post-apocalypse, and is a little sour. Because she's now trying to figure out. Or trying to, I don't know how I want to say it, not trying to get revenge. She's trying to get her technology back, essentially, that cold fusion technology she was working on. She looked at it as the end all be all to kind of save society, and Vault-Tec basically snatched it from her pre-war. So now she's trying to go back and get that. That's what the scientists in the Enclave is trying to get to her, is this cold fusion, infinite energy kind of technology, trying to get it to her in the apocalypse. And she's also, I believe, the head of the NCR, or at least a major member of it at this point. She was a member of it with Shady Sands. Like, there's so much here. It's so hard to
Yeah.
back up. Like, as I'm thinking of a beat, I'm like, well, I have to
Because
think about this
remember,
beat
the
first.
crazy cult is like worshiping her because the cult was a bunch of people from the remnants of Shady Sands. So she was clearly, like you said,
Hmm.
some sort of high figure within Shady Sands itself. And then they place some sort of connection between her and, spoilers, her and the mother of, or the wife of Hank McLean, mother of Norm and
Lucy.
Lucy. So there's some sort of connection there. I'm not quite sure what the. They almost played it off as though like kind of a relationship
They had a
or
relationship,
something
yeah.
kind of going on.
And they might have.
But yeah, there's like, I don't know. It's all kind of fascinating. There's almost too much to kind of delve into.
There is. I guess some of the interesting parts, and we're kind of jumping to like some of the big reveals kind of quick. Like honestly, a lot of stuff that happens with like Lucy in the Wasteland is her more just interacting and realizing what the Wasteland is and how to kind of adapt to it to get to her dad. And she gets to her dad at the end. Norm kind of goes through figuring out, okay, what's going on creepy in the vaults? Why don't things match up? And he gets to this point where he finds the big answer. And all this stuff kind of coincides while also doing these flashbacks with Cooper. It all kind of leads up to this point where he realizes his wife at vault-tec is not being completely honest with him. There's some stuff she's keeping from about what vault-tec is trying to do, and Moldaver gives him a way to kind of eavesdrop on her. So he hacks into her Pip-Boy, he's got a listening device, and then he finds in a meeting
Well,
that,
he comes
oh
up with
yeah,
he
vault-tec.
comes up with an excuse to go to vault-tec, and the excuse
Mhm.
was is that his wife told him somebody who, an executive there, was a big fan of his, and that fan wanted an autograph or to meet him. So he goes there acting
I don't
like,
think that's why he went there.
I thought that's
Because
why.
that was something that she asked after. No, he was asked that like once he was already in the office.
Oh,
Was
Betty.
it Betty? Young
Young
Betty is
Betty is
like,
there. Yeah.
hey, we have this new intern, whoever, whatever, who's a huge fan. So I don't remember the exact reason. I think he was just trying to come in to see his wife was his argument, but she
Mm.
was in a meeting, so he had to wait in her office, something like that. But point being, he eavesdrops on her to figure out what's happening with
It's one of the better
Vault-tec.
scenes in the whole show.
Oh yeah. Well, it brings everything to a head. Like all the storylines tie up here. So what's happening is his wife has basically told him that I've set us up so we're going to be in the vault. Okay, so when the bombs drop, we're going to be safe. And all that seems is kind of uneasy to Cooper because he's like, well, why? Who's guaranteeing the bombs are going to drop? Any of this stuff. And then while listening to this meeting, he basically hears their structure for the vaults, like how there's going to be good vaults and bad vaults and crazy stuff. And then the point is brought up by other executives in the room from other organizations. Like this is where you see representatives from Robco and West Tech. I think
Mr.
Mr. House
House.
was
Mr.
there.
House was
Yeah.
there.
And they're all like, well, why are we going to invest to help you do all these vaults and set up all these experiments when there's no guarantee we're going to need in these vaults? And this one, the big moment kind of comes out that his wife is like, well, you know what? We can guarantee it by dropping the bombs ourselves. So she's already made this a kind of
Well, don't
final
forget
outcome.
before she says that, she looks up at a shadowed executive sitting up on high, and you don't know who this guy is. You don't see his face.
Mm,
It's just a shadowy figure, which again pointing to what you were talking about. There's higher executives than
yeah.
the wife and what was his name? Other guy, happy-go-lucky guy that was leading
Oh,
the
Bud.
Bud. Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, Hank's listening to all this and hears the fact that Vault-Tec is considering dropping the bomb.
Cooper, you mean?
And that's all we really. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Cooper hears that they're going to drop the bomb, or that's what they're considering, and that's kind of the last thing we see from him pre-explosion. Like last thing we know is like he got his daughter, and the bombs
The last
dropped,
thing
and
we
we
see
only know how that kind of.
is Hank coming into the room after he finds out all of that
Oh
stuff.
yes. So the other thing that ties them, which kind of ties the story into Lucy.
Because he
So
sees Hank's
Lucy's
face, which
dad
becomes a
Hank.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, Lucy's dad, Hank, who was kidnapped from the vault, apparently is the intern that we just mentioned that was working with Cooper's wife, who comes in for an autograph. So as Cooper's hearing, oh, my wife's thinking about dropping these bombs, he turns around and sees young Hank, which doesn't mean a lot to him
And
probably right then and there,
a very
but it
odd
ties into the
CGI.
future.
Wasn't that great
Yeah,
looking?
de-aging is tricky. Yeah. Overall, CGI was pretty good in this show, but there were a few spots like the de-aging that was it was tough. But I don't think it was overly distracting, but
That and some of the
this one kind of
suits.
connects all the threads.
Some of the
Mhm.
suits, like whenever you could
Oh,
see
in
the suits were
motion,
like
yeah,
jumping and doing stuff, it's like. But yeah, I agree.
yeah. Um, so anyway, this is where things kind of come together. So now you have Cooper's motivation. You now figure out how Hank, the overseer, is kind
Fits
of
into
tied into
everything.
this. Which Lucy finds out. I think this whole story kind of gets retold to Lucy from Moldaver when she finally reaches him at the end. The other aspect of this you find out is that all the middle management, maybe upper management, I don't know, they've all decided to basically be cryogenically frozen into Vault 31. And that's what's happening in the Vault 31, 32, 33 experiment. Someone from Vault 31 will come out of cryogen after X amount of years, and they always get sent over to the other vaults to be overseers. So that's how they're always staying in charge of those vaults. The people who always come out are always from Vault 31. They always become the overseer, and they're basically old vault-tec execs. So this is what ties Norm into this, because Norm finds that out back inside the vaults. Lucy finds all this out about her father. Oh, okay, so we did miss one other beat. Because honestly, that's not, I think, what really gets Lucy so upset at the end. I
Oh, the
guess
Shady Sand stuff. Yeah.
Lucy's mom had found all this out first at some point prior to the show starting, and basically took her kids and ran. She's like, "Nope, my husband's a jerk. He's evil. He's from 200 years ago, etc., etc. I don't want anything to do with it." So she leaves the vault with her kids, escapes to Shady Sands. Hank, the current overseer, gets a little upset with that, and he decides to go steal his kids and nuke Shady Sands, killing his mom or their mom. Apparently, basically, he ghoulified her without realizing,
Well, they
and she's actually there in the room at the end.
well they even say that it wasn't just because he was pissed about them being taken. It also was a vault-tec
Vault-tec
thing
was losing control.
because
Yeah,
they were losing control, and again, their whole thing is they want control. They want there to be a reason for the vault. For the vault, it's a
yeah.
investment for them, and the
Well,
fact that
they had
there's
expected that. I'm sorry, they had expected when the real bombs dropped, everything on the surface would just be gone. There'd be no other factions, no other humans, no nothing. So it'd only be Vault-tec stuff, all vaults. And then 200 years later, whenever, when the people from Vault-tec finally emerge, it will just be a Vault-tec society. They can recreate in their image. So I guess as they find out that that's not the case, people have survived or escaped and made new civilization up top, they're now not so keen on it. So that was part of, yes, Hank's motivation for taking out Shady Sands. Nukes the whole place, takes his kids back, doesn't tell them what happened, of course. And that's the big realization that Lucy finds out at the end, that her dad basically nuked her mom and stole her back, and just doesn't go well at that point. And man, where do you even go from there? Hank escapes. The ghoul shows up. Mac shows up. They have a big confrontation. It basically ends up with Hank stealing power armor, going off into the desert. Ghoul and Lucy are now chasing after him, and Max got knocked out, but he's also the only person there at the final kind of stand where this fusion tech was. And as the other Brotherhood meets up with them, they're like, "Hey, you basically have saved the
they
Brotherhood and
think
captured
he
the
killed
technology.
Moldaver.
You're great." Yeah. So he gets praised and he's gonna be a new knight, although he's not too keen on that idea. He just wants to go chase
And
down
you
Lucy.
missed.
So
There's also a great line with
there's a lot I missed. Yeah.
Oh well, no, because then when Cooper finally shows up, and he shows up at the top with everyone, and he comes in, and there's like a really slow motion of Hank looking at who it is, and as you slowly see
Mm,
him come in, he says where the f is my family or something, and that's
yeah.
before Hank turns around and takes off, and it's like oh, we almost got it. He was so close. Or because I think they
Yeah.
actually the daughter Lucy actually says, "Why didn't you kill him?" And he says, "Well, that's because he didn't kill him for a reason, because he wants to follow him so that he can
Let's
get any
chase him.
more
Yeah.
answers." Yeah. Although I still think he could have
Yeah, and
captured
that.
him and maybe gotten what he wanted, but
Yeah. Who knows? There's so much to the story. Like I tell you, that was a hard summary to kind of run through, because
synopsis.
there's so many little things in there. There's so many little stories, stuff like happened in the Super Duper Mart. They went into another vault. There was a whole town they went into, Philly, that had a whole thing. Like, it's a very dense show for 8 episodes. And actually, really thinking back on it, I can't believe they covered that much ground with that many
It
stories in really a pretty short time frame.
That was a whole aspect of the games, though, is that you have this main quest, but You have all, and it even gets mentioned by Cooper, but you always get distracted by all of this side stuff, and it really
Yep.
feels like there is a bunch of side stuff that you get kind of that distracts you throughout. That's a great
Yeah.
line too by
I
him.
guess
He's like,
as a
thou will always be distracted by bullshit."
yeah. I guess saying I kind of go back and I know you have some nods in here. We can kind of start just going through those, but overall, I thought the narrative was done really well. It was interesting for me all the way through. I was definitely engaged, wanted to see, what was the crazy experiment in vault-tec? What did her dad really do? Like, I wanted to see things play out. I always had a good kind of narrative string I was being pulled from, and all the characters had good motivations to get to where they were. So, I'm sure there's some little nitpicks I could make, but I'll tell you, when they do so many things right like they have, I lose my want to be overly critical. Like, I will give them a lot
Oh
of
yeah,
leeway on stuff. I may not on a show like Halo does not earn the benefit of the doubt, right?
no,
So I want to tear that apart every step of the way. This show does so much right, from world building to characters to lore to everything, that even if there's some things I probably could pick apart, they're so
yeah. It's
trivial, I
like
don't think they really add much to the conversation.
with
Like, they did a
other
great job, I think, selling
with
everything.
with other shows, when you start getting to some of the coincidences where it's like several times throughout the show the characters
Mhm.
all wind up in the same exact spot, same exact time, all three, four of them. It's like, yeah, but what they do with those scenes are so fun and cool. Like the whole battle in Philly,
Yeah.
it's like, sure, it's a coincidence all of them are there, but you get like legs getting blown off. You see, there's even like we'll start sucking the references, but I think it's inferred that like the bloody mess perk is being used throughout, because every
Mhm.
time like Cooper or the ghoul shoots somebody, there's just gigantic pools of blood and limbs getting blown all
Mm.
over the place, and they never really reference vats, but I think that's what a lot of the slow motion in some of the battles is
Hmm.
like you actually see
Interesting
the
thought.
bullet. You actually see the bullet, like whenever some people would shoot and it goes. I think that's vats technically. I
Huh.
don't know.
I never thought of it. That's interesting. Yeah, there are some contrivances here and coincidences, but they're usually set up in such a way to play for a bigger moment or a bigger story beat. So, could there arguably have been a better way to write it? Maybe, but it's not a big deal. Like, the story still
Hmm.
moves along at a good pace. So if nothing else, I'd be like, well, this saves some nonsense of them having to make some weird workaround to get them here into this location at the same time, as opposed to let's just get them there so we can keep doing some fun stuff with the story. So I appreciate that it was compact. I appreciate just how much stuff that was here that was all faithful to the show, and I thought the narrative, everything was really really good. Like, I enjoyed this show a lot as a broad perspective. But I know you have a list of nods here. Do you want to go and start digging through some of
Oh sure,
these interesting little things that correlate to the games and stuff like
yeah.
that?
So we mentioned all the music. We also mentioned Operation Acreage, which that was said on one of the news broadcasts very early on. I have
Mhm.
them all bundled up in terms of like
Didn't
food and
Coop?
different.
He fought in
He fought in Operation,
Operation Anchorage. That
yeah,
was the war he was in. Yeah.
because he says he has experience with. He even says at one point he's at the end when he's like, I wore one of these back in the war, and he's like
Power armor.
right up underneath the neck or something. There's a weakness in every suit
Yeah.
that we used to take
On the
advantage
on the
of.
chest plate.
That
Yeah.
was kind of a ridiculous scene where the ghoul himself takes on like 10, 15 people, but it's like, whatever, you know.
As I said, I'll forgive it. Like, they could have written that out differently, where it was either a longer battle or they made him, have some other rationale for how he could have beat him, but it would have just stretched things out a little bit. I think having just that cool moment where he could kind of be just a cool character that kind of gets a jump on him, I think played out well. So yeah, a little contrived, but it played to the service of the story.
Gosh, now all of a sudden all the little things are popping in my head. We don't quite understand. I don't quite understand how he escaped with his daughter, with giant nuclear bombs dropping right next to him. Like he was at the very top of the Hollywood Hills. It's like on
Yeah.
horseback.
Well, yeah, but there's a story there. Like, there could have been a vault at the top of that hill. Remember Fallout 4? Like, they dropped that bomb like a mile away, but there, right up the hill, was the vault entrance.
But
So
we
maybe
know
he
at
was
some
running to the vault
point
that was right around the corner.
but we know at some point his wife is with his daughter. So where was did they come?
There's a story beat missing there, but
They'll answer
I
it. I
think that's
guarantee.
once
Oh
again.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we will get. I think if they would have played that out, they would have spelled out too much for where the story would be next. So yeah, you're right. We don't know, but I'm okay with that for right now. There's
Yeah,
a season 2
fair
coming,
enough.
so we'll see.
Yeah. Okay, so all of the food references. We got sugar bombs, we got Nuka-Cola,
Mhm.
iguana on a stick, yum yum deviled eggs. There's much more, but that's the main ones I saw. One of my favorite ones was the kids at the very beginning of the show are watching Grognak the Barbarian.
Oh yeah,
If you don't remember, that was like a big comic series where I think every time you got one, you got like strength or something,
yeah.
some boost. We got just books in general. Like in the game, there were like a bunch of different books. I think, yeah, and each one, depending on its category, gave you a boost there as well. We got the Pip Boy, Pip Games, Atomic Command. Norm is playing at the very beginning. Um, I already mentioned Special with Lucy's opening, skills and attributes. Vault Thumbs Up, vault-tec, all that stuff with the color scheme.
Yeah,
We got the
bobbleheads in there.
we got the bobbleheads. We got Stimpaks, Jet, Abraxo, Radaway, all of that stuff. We got the
How did you
class.
feel about? I'm sorry, the stim pack usage. 'Cause, like it basically was like,
I
I
loved
mean, just
it.
like the game, you get a stim pack and
Yeah,
you're like, I'm good, everything's fine.
yeah. It's just like the game. I wouldn't want it any other way. It's like, oh, you have
Yeah,
your dog just got
big
stabbed.
hole in your chest. Yeah,
Yeah.
stim pack, good.
hmm
Yeah,
That's actually another thing we didn't get answered. Is like, wasn't in the games. What exactly is dog meat? He's some sort of experiment. They don't go with what he does,
yeah.
what he can do, like what's the connection between him and the guy. I don't know. Dog meat was another thing they didn't really touch on much. Oh, they had the in the Vault 33 when the crap's hitting the fan. We had the please stand by screen. You know when
Hmm.
the crops are on fire. We had the junk jet, the weapon that shoots junk. The
Oh
one
yeah.
guy gets shot with a baby leg. Let's see. All the enemies we saw a Yao
Oh
Guai, we saw Assaultrons, turrets. We got a very short clip of a super mutant, I think. We got
yeah, I missed that one.
a Gulper, which they totally changed the Gulper here. It totally looked different in the video games. We got a Mr. Handy, which, as it turns out, was I never heard this actor. I had his name here. Mr. Handy, what's his name? He's from what we do in the shadows. I didn't know that. Is he originally the voice of Mr. Handy? Because there's an
I
episode.
couldn't tell you.
There's an episode. Remember where they're having
Yeah,
the
they talk
party
about
at
the
Cooper's
actor
house.
getting
Yeah,
licensed for it. Yeah.
yeah. But he's like a
I
big
don't know if
time
he's
actor
the actor who does in the
in
games.
games.
Maybe. I
Oh,
don't know.
okay. I don't know either.
I don't know.
Uh, we got all sorts of stuff. We got Robo Brain. We got a very short clip of a Deathclaw. It's just a skull. We don't really get to see like
Yeah, I just saw the
body
skull. I
and
didn't see the
everything.
whole death claw.
Yeah. We
You have
got
Megaton listed here. I don't remember that.
a lot of
Did they just talk about Megaton?
no, a lot of people think that Philly is like a Megaton reference. So it's not really Megaton, but it's a people call it
That
a
might be a stretch.
reference. Yeah, I think it's a stretch.
Well, they're in different locations. Like Philly, like is on the West Coast, and Megaton
Maybe
was
it's a
on the
nod.
East
A
Coast,
lot of people
DC.
think of it as a nod. I don't know what to think of it.
Maybe I just thought it was a different town, but either
Yeah.
way.
One of my favorite places from the game, Super Duper Mart and Red Rocket. Those are
Hmm.
classic. We got Brahmin. Oh, a big one. The water chip's been destroyed. They have that reference uh, in the very beginning where, the guy comes up and he's got the water chip and he says it's been destroyed.
Yeah,
Apparently, I don't know anything, but apparently I looked it up. Apparently, that's a reference to the very
from
first
Fallout One.
game. Yeah, that's the whole reason that
Yeah,
the
that was your
original
whole point.
leaves. Dweller leaves. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's kind of cool. You got Fusion Core, which those were like super integral in the original game or in the games. I have it there. Codsworth's Origins, along with voice actor Matt Berry. That's the guy from the show. NCR, we got Ranger Armor from New Vegas, which was really cool. You actually see somebody walking around in it. We have Tesla Magazine, hacking puzzles. That was one of the coolest
Yeah,
things.
they straight up did a hacking puzzle. Yeah.
Norm, when he's trying to find out what's in Vault 31, he has to like hack a computer just to talk to somebody over there.
Fallout 3 style hacking.
Yeah.
I liked how they worked in those gameplay elements into the story. Like it makes them feel real. I mean, yes, it still feels odd. Like, why would somebody really hack a computer that way? But it makes it feel very in line with the games. It makes it kind of fleshed out. So I thought that was cool.
But yeah, a bunch of other stuff. We have Mr. House, New Vegas, we talked about. We have the Enclave, VATS to an extent, Bloody Mess perk.
Yeah,
all
I
of the
mentioned that. Yeah.
companies, Robco, West-Tec, and then one that was mentioned but we didn't get to see much of was the Gek, which in the original
Again,
games, the Gek is a huge thing because that is supposed to be the device when the vault dwellers leave the vault. That's supposed to be the devices they use that like terraform and change the environment or remove the radiation, which in the games was like a really big deal.
yeah. Yeah, a
Um,
lot of references, a lot of little nods,
mhm.
which, as I think or mentioned this, I think does a really great job of tying in the games with this show. It makes this show really just feel like a continuation of those games.
Mhm. So shoot, we're getting to the point where I just start coming up with whatever I had left. Um, did we talk about the bomb origins? Did we say if we liked them or did dislike them?
We talk about the main nukes that fell.
Yes. Did we talk? I think we did talk
So
about
I
that.
think, well, you and me had briefly mentioned it, I think prior to even hopping on the stream, and I said I kind of want to reiterate it because you had mentioned you didn't like that they basically said that, well, Vault-Tec dropped the bomb. They didn't say Vault-Tec dropped the bomb. They said they were considering it. And I think
Considering
this
it.
is, I think I've heard other people say this too. And this is where one thing I hope they don't really answer, because that's also always been one of the things about Fallout where it's always been open-ended. Who dropped the bombs? Was it America? Was it China? Was it whoever? So they're adding another party into this. Who was it? Vault-Tec. Do I think Vault-Tec would have dropped it? Yes. Do I think they initially did? No. Honestly, I think it'd be kind of odd if they dropped it, assuming. And once again, I don't know exactly how things play out between Cooper realizing what his wife's doing versus that scene at the beginning of the show. Like maybe she falls from grace after that because he makes a big stink about stuff. I don't know. But if we assume that she's still involved in Vault-Tec, why would she let her kid go to a birthday party if she knows that she, as part of Vault-Tec, is about to drop the bomb? The whole point of her doing this is to keep her kid safe.
That makes
So it makes me
sense.
feel like, why would, unless once again maybe it was a fall from grace, if he made a big stink about it, which may messed up her position in Vault-Tec, maybe then they did drop the bomb. Like once again, it's open ended, but I don't necessarily think Vault-Tec dropped the bomb. It could still be
China.
anybody,
I think
which
it was
they should leave it
China,
that way.
right? Because it's was
Well,
it only
people thought it
China
could
or
be
was it?
China.
Yeah.
There were other groups. It could have been anybody. And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the point. So hopefully they leave it that way. I don't want them to spell out every single detail.
Yeah. So that was one point I wanted to bring up. Another thing I just wanted to say is that like you had mentioned it before, but I think a great adaptation, it's like a prime example that it's doing its job is that you want to either experience or re-experience the source material, and I think this show does a
Mhm.
great job of making clearly making me and you want to go back and play through some of the Fallouts again, which I think that's the
Yeah.
total opposite of what Halo did. Was like I didn't go play Halo after watching that. I was more like, ill. I was kind of done with those.
Yeah, and to be fair, a lot of it was the music. Just like the music triggers some kind of like Pavlovian response. Like I hear that, and I can immediately go back and picture myself walking through Fallout 3 Wasteland again and listen to those songs. But yeah, I am definitely interested in hopping back into that franchise from a gameplay perspective.
Before we touch on the last two aspects of what we have, there's one more question I had, and that was the one you didn't like. Uh, was it a big talking point around this? Is people being upset about all the episodes being dropped all at once? It's like I personally think the only people that are upset about this are like content creators who want to like slowly drip feed
Yes.
content over a period of time, and it's like
Yes, that's why I don't like this. It comes across really ingenuine. Like, 'cause I saw what was an
it's like
article on
I'm a
Kotaku
content
about it. There
creator,
was
but
an
it's like
article on IGN.
yeah,
Well, I think it's almost worse coming from these major media
major
outlets. Like, I think it
outlets,
was just
yeah.
today or yesterday. Like, IGN was like, "Oh no, this would have been better if it was weekly, because it means that you can have more water cooler moments. You can let it kind of sit in the zeitgeist longer." Okay, maybe. I mean, maybe that matters to
Well,
you. I
it
mean,
comes
for
down
me, that
to a
isn't a big sticking
creator's like
point.
artistic vision or artistic
It,
decision.
there
It's like if that's how they want to launch
I
it,
don't think
then
it's about that. I don't think it's about artistic because it doesn't really change the artistic vision if you get to watch it once a week or all at once. This really comes down to, okay, an entity like IGN. if it runs for 8 weeks, they have 8 weeks of articles they can milk for clicks and views. So when they put out a article like, "Oh, this should be weekly," it comes across very disingenuous. I really don't like
And the
that.
people behind the
It
creation of
doesn't
Fallout,
stir.
but the people behind it aren't they probably don't give two what's about what benefits the zeitgeist or what benefits content creators. They're just like, we want as many people talking about this all at once as possible because this is our creation. You know what I mean? It makes sense that they would just like want as many eyeballs
Maybe. I
on
mean,
it.
you could maybe. I mean, you could argue their rationale for a bunch of different perspectives because it could benefit them to stretch it out longer. Maybe, but not necessarily. I've seen this work both ways. Like you stretch out a show for more than one season's worth of content. A lot of times people will lose interest after the third, fourth, fifth week, whatever it may be. Or then you have a big gap between season two, or take a break in the. Oh, what's the show that just came out and did this? Was it Invincible? Everybody was really big on it for the first
I've heard
season,
of it,
and then
but
the
I've
second
never.
season came out, and it was they did it weekly, and they took like a big break in between the weeks for like the first half of season two and the second half,
Mm-hmm.
and it just dropped in like popularity. So if anything, stretching it out can be a negative. You'll lose interest in it over time because life gets distracting. I'm not overly eager to watch something weekly necessarily. For those who want to pace it out to fit their schedule, you can if they offer you all the episodes at once. For those who want to binge it, that's great too. And I still think you'll get a good month's worth out of it, even if people are binging it. Like, yes, the first week or so are gonna be the biggest. Not everybody's gonna binge it that first week, right? They're just hearing about it. They need time to go through it. Not everybody's gonna be able to binge it in 1 or 2 days. They'll need a week or two anyway.
I did.
You still get a month or so worth.
I think I
Well,
watched it
some
all in
people
like three or
will, some
four
people won't.
days. Yeah,
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. Like I said, 1 or 2 days, 3 or 4 days is
not much
not
better.
nothing.
Yeah.
I guess my point being, yeah, my point being is that people who want to stretch it can. It's still going to be a popular topic for a good month or so. After that point, it's going to fall off regardless.
I
So,
think it's more fair
my
for
issue is I just
the average viewer to come up with that argument. Like if we're upset with that, it's fine. But for like Kotaku or IGN to say it, it's like you're right.
yeah,
It's not
I guess
genuine.
that's why I don't like it. Yeah, it doesn't come across like it's not in the interest of the audience at all. I guess is what you're saying. Um, I don't know. I just don't like it. I prefer it being binged, I think, or not binged, but being released all at once. So you have the opportunity to binge if you want. It certainly fits my life a little bit better. Not saying that my perspective is the most important, but I would wager there's a lot of people that like the convenience of, okay, I've got this whole season. I can watch it at my leisure, all at once a week, with my family on the weekends. I don't care how you want to do it, but it's now your choice on how you want to digest that media. I think that's a better format. Few times have I enjoyed being like, oh, I can't wait to wait a whole week to talk about this next thing on the water cooler moment. Like, just give me the content now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm ranting and probably
No,
losing
you're
myself
good.
in it, but
It was something I
just don't
really
like it.
wanted to bring up just because I knew that was a talking point. Um, shoot, what? Gosh, I'm sure there's going to be some stuff we forgot, but kind of just getting into it.
No,
I
it's a
mean,
lot of stuff.
I feel like we already kind of touched on overall feelings towards the show. For the most part, I very much loved it. I think it was really good. I think it's I hate to say it, I think it's an excellent addition to the Fallout lore. Like I mean, we talked about some of the things that don't quite fit well or don't quite fit perfectly, but for the most part, it does a great job of inserting itself into kind of like the
Hmm.
vault and everything. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. As I don't want to reiterate too much, but I think they did a fabulous job on this. I guess my interest now is okay, where does this go from here? So obviously season two already confirmed. There's obviously some story threads that they have to kind of dig into and finalize. But we also have to think this is a larger canon now too, right? There's a Fallout 5 that's going to happen one day, but man, like 10 years from now, like when are we going to see a Fallout 5? Because
They're still working on Elder
Bethesda is working
Scrolls.
on new Elder Scrolls. That's what, 4 years off or something.
Hey, they've
So
got. Did we mention that New Vegas was shown at the end of this? Did we ever talk about that?
no, we didn't. Yeah, I think that's we kind of dabbled around New Vegas a little bit. So we talked about the timelines and stuff.
At
They show Hank, the father, running out into the desert, and it shows him looking out at a what appears to be a destroyed New Vegas. It's hard to really tell, but it looks like it's not nearly as glistening as it was back in the game. So New Vegas has fallen on some hard times. So I'm sure season
could
two is going to investigate that.
could that open? Because again, we don't think main Bethesda is gonna have time for a new Fallout for at least several more years. Could that open the gates for possibly an Obsidian too? I mean, Obsidian is now they're under Microsoft as well.
I would love that.
It makes
I guess the
sense.
concern there, and I don't know. Well, I don't know how true all this is. Like, the possibility is certainly there, but for the longest time, wasn't there some bad blood between Bethesda and
Yes.
Obsidian? They weren't
Mm-hmm.
happy with how that all kind of played out with Obsidian getting New Vegas and doing what they did. So I don't know how much control Bethesda would be in to allow that, or
That
now
would
it's all a Microsoft
come down to
decision.
Papa Phil to be like, hey, I
Yeah.
want a new Fallout game with all this talk around Fallout right now. Let's get one.
But even then, so I guess what I'm thinking is like, when do we actually foresee that being a possibility? Like, it's not like they're all of a sudden just deciding, oh, this show's doing good, Obsidian start working on New Vegas too. Like,
No,
this
it
would have
would
been something that
three,
has
four
been in the works for
years.
a while.
Yeah.
Okay, but then where does that kind of leave us? I guess what I'm thinking is, all right, this show, if it does well, is going to go for a season 2, maybe a season 3. So we're going to get 2 or 3 more years of this show before we ever see a game. It's going to cover a lot of ground in that time. So where does the game pick up? I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, a New Vegas 2. This show is going to very quickly dive into New Vegas. So does that leave room for a New Vegas 2? Does it have to do an older game to fill in a gap? I guess that's why I'm kind of wondering is where do they go from here? Do they try to follow up the show with wherever it ends off at? That's gonna be a hard thing to do too, like timing of a game versus
Yeah.
a live show. I guess not live show, but you know what I'm saying, a show that's persistently coming out. Or do they have it where this show is just gonna end after 3 seasons? They have a story they want to tell, get the canon to a certain point, and then have a game pick it up from there.
That's probably your
I don't know.
best
I guess
bet.
that's why I'm curious.
I think the way you mentioned that's probably the best bet is to have a shortened, although, money. If they see seasons 2 and 3 are doing well, do they really want to end it? I don't. I'm
It's
hoping.
hard to, I will say, I'm sorry. I guess I was just gonna say, like, I know what you're saying. Like, I mean, yeah, you have a cash cow, you want to milk it as long as you can, but I don't think the love for this show will last more than 2 or 3. Like, I really like it right now, but I'm gonna want to see it start wrapping up and moving on and getting to the next thing. So, I'm down for a season 2 for sure. Maybe a season 3. I don't know if I want to see these characters for 5, 6, 7 seasons, kind of thing. Like, I think 2 to 3 seasons, because some of these characters are going to have to wrap up their story. I feel like the ghoul
Walton
probably needs
Go-
to finish the storyline in
Walton
season
Goggins
2.
too big an actor. He's gonna go do something else, and he'll only be around for a season or two. He's in high
Yeah.
demand.
I guess a lot of these stories will have to wrap up. So, unless they're wanting to do like a whole different perspective, and they could do that, make this almost like an anthology kind of thing. A couple of seasons with Lucy and crew, and then another season completely somewhere else with a new story. Maybe that would be fine, but I don't know. Just trying
Hopefully,
to figure out how they're gonna thread that.
hopefully whatever they're doing, they have like a lore master like on the pulse of whatever it is they're trying to build all
Mm.
together, and hopefully that's Todd's got a handful of lore masters. Like you said, like I mentioned, he said something about how he had like a group of Bethesda people at all of
Mm.
the writing rooms and all of the meetings and everything. So hopefully they're all kind
I
of
will
working
say,
together.
I really hope that we're not 10 years away from a Fallout game. Like, this has piqued my interest to not only play an older one, I'd love to have a new Fallout game. I mean, I know people are going to be very iffy on the quality of it after Fallout 4 and 76, and everybody was a fan of it, but I want to see something new in there. And I think if Bethesda's the only one at the helm, we're not going to see it for a long time. So I really do hope that
What is
someone else has been tasked with it. Obsidian be great. Maybe there's someone else. I don't know.
do you think do you think to speed up the process for a Fallout game, do you think they would venture into a remake? I don't know why I never
Yes, I
remake
do.
Fallout 1 or
And there's
Fallout 2 or something.
I don't think they do 1 and 2.
Well, make them
But I
totally
do. There's
complete
been some talk.
games.
Well, they're complete games. Don't
No,
don't
no,
go
I'm
down
I'm
that
saying
rabbit hole.
complete
1
different
and 2.
games, like not the strategy over the top. Maybe they make it into a typical third
I
person.
think that would be opening up such a can of worms. Um, I I don't think that's a route they're going to
So
want to
you want
go. I
more
think
of a
their better
remake of
bet.
like 3 or something?
Well, that's what I've heard rumblings of. Is they may be looking to
I don't know
announce at
what.
least a remake
I
of
haven't even
Fallout
heard
3.
of rumblings. I just came up with the. I was like, would they ever do a remake? That'd be
It's
interesting.
been mentioned. I mean, I don't know how authentic or I how valid any of those claims are, but I have heard it on various podcasts and whatnot that there have been some mentions of maybe one of those being a remake. I think 3 is probably the most likely. I think 3 still has a lot of favor. New Vegas, I mean, unless Obsidian's going to be directly involved, which maybe. I don't think they'll do 1 and 2 though, because there are some diehard fans for 1 and 2 that are going to fight tooth and nail if they try to translate that over. And plus, those are interplays babies. I feel like that's, I don't know. I don't want to say disrespectful. That's probably the wrong word for it, but I think you should leave those classics as they are. 3 could use a polish and maybe some, new mechanics applied to it, and they'll appease a lot of people until a new Fallout comes out.
Well,
It'd be cool if like this. Honestly, it'd be great if this summer during the E3 time that we don't have E3 anymore, if they already had this kind of in the can ready to go, like coming right off the trails of
oh,
the popularity
they
of the show.
Todd's gonna want to do something for their showcase or
I feel like
whatever.
they need something because if they don't, what was it, the popularity that they're kind of riding on right now is going to die off pretty quick. They've got about a month, right, to kind of have this be a popular topic. If they don't come by pretty quick and be like, here's the next Fallout related thing you can engage with, people are going to forget about this until the next season, which is going to be what, a year or two. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I hope they have something ready to go. A remake would be fine. I'd love to play Fallout 3. I don't think we're going to see a brand new Fallout game for quite a while. So
Yeah. I lost my trail of thought. I was gonna mention something, but
sorry.
oh well. No. Well, shoot, man. Have we done it all? Was there any other small plot element we forgot? I know we didn't venture too far into Vault 4. I mean, do we? You don't need to. It was experiment's gone wrong.
Yeah,
Vault goes crazy. That was one
there's
of the
so many
better
cool
parts.
little things. I guess I just say if you haven't watched the show yet, go watch it. There are so many little nods that we didn't mention, cool little story beats, cool little moments. The thing I'm looking at the screen right now with Mr. Handy and Lucy in the Super Duper Mart, that was a fun interaction. Like, there's a lot of that in here. So good show if you're a Fallout fan. I think you'd be hard pressed not to like what's on offer here. I'm sure there were some that are going to critique it, but go into it looking for a good time. Try not to be overly cynical about it, and I think you'll find a lot to really enjoy
And
here.
and to somebody who may not be a gamer or anything, I would actually say if you like the show, this show does a great job of recreating what the games are all about. So if you're curious at all, I guarantee you go, if you don't have an Xbox, grab an Xbox and go get Game Pass. I guarantee you most of these games are going to be on there on their subscription service. So once again, and
Yep.
these games are dirt cheap on Steam on PC. You could probably get these for like three,
Oh
four
yeah, you
bucks
can get the
each,
whole
five
Bethesda
bucks.
collection for like $10. Yeah.
Yeah, you have like 500 hours worth of games, between 2 or 3 of these. So, yeah. Well, shoot. I think that's all we got. What about you, Phoenix? Do you have anything else on the horizon? Anything we might want to talk about? I know I've been saying it on.
We talked about. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just talking about what we have on the channel in general. Do you have something about the
I
Fallout
was
you wanted to
saying,
mention?
I know at some point, not Fallout. No, I thought we were talking about other things to talk about at some point. I know Halo, we've mentioned a few times. I'd like to come back and talk about season 2.
We could.
I know we didn't get too deep into it, but I do have some thoughts there, so maybe we can revisit that here before
Yeah.
too long, before it's completely, forgotten about.
I would want to do a shorter chat. I don't want to talk about maybe an hour. Try and keep that to an hour or something.
Yeah,
Um,
we'll see what happens. I get ranty, you know that.
yeah. I get like I've been saying it, but like the only other game that's coming out is Hellblade, and that's like the end of next month.
Mm.
So we got a this whole month and next month have been very droughty in terms of like major game releases, which I haven't had a problem with it. I've been kind of trying to I don't know if you've seen, but I've been playing through the original Psychonauts right now, trying to make it
Yeah, I
through
saw that.
Psychonauts 1 and 2. I never got to play 2, so. And then
Yeah, no, I think that's probably good for me too. Like, I think I might want to dive into one of the Fallout games,
you
but
still got
I'll
my
probably play
Mario
that pretty
game,
slow and casual for a while. What Mario game? I mean, the one
RPG.
that's sitting right here that I'm never gonna return to. So,
You still need to play that, yeah. But yeah,
yeah, one day.
that break leaves us room for Fallout. So again, if Phoenix decides he's gonna play Fallout 3, you can expect I'll be streaming some Fallout 3. That might be kind of fun. But yeah. All right, guys. Well, that was our little chit chat of Fallout, the TV series. Down in the comments, we'd love to know how much you guys are loving the show. Did we miss anything? Were there any aspects of it you may have liked or disliked? We'd love to hear back. I I don't know, Phoenix, you got anything to say before we head on out?
No, I'm good.
No, just keep venturing into the wasteland, y'all. Have fun. I can't tell you how happy I guess I'll just throw it out there. I'm so happy to see people enjoying Fallout. This is one of those things where it's like it's a game series that I've liked or loved for such a long time. It's really cool to kind of see people jumping into something that like it's the same thing with The Last of Us. Like I really enjoyed it. It's kind of cool to see non-gamers kind of digging it for once. Makes me feel like a cool
I'll
kid.
tell you, it's really good for Bethesda too, because they
They
have
needed a winner.
not been on the yeah, they needed a win. And I think this is, I mean, not it necessarily, but it's definitely going to put them in some good graces for a little bit. And one thing I think is going to give some resurgence to Fallout that after 76 has left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. So hopefully it's a good sign for good things to come.
Oh, definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. We love you. And of course, I don't know, keep an eye out. Maybe you'll see some Halo content here soon. So, all right. Thank you. Adios, everybody.